Let's get it on.
Hi, everybody. Just gonna let Benoit do that thing in the background. The show's actually started, Benoit, so this will be on the YouTube version. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Star Citizen Live. I'm your host, Jared Huckabee, and if you've never seen Star Citizen Live before, it's where we take about an hour, although not in this case, it's going to be a lot longer, out of the end of our week sometimes, and talk to you, the Star Citizen community. We put our developers to the test. We have them answer questions. We have them talk about various aspects of their work. Sometimes we show off really unfortunate plushies that never made it into production. We do all manner of things in this show. On the show this week, we are doing the prophesized sequel to a special edition show that we did back in the beginning of February this year. Now, for those of you who might not remember, or you've joined the project since then, welcome aboard. Back in February this year, after Chris Roberts announced in his letter from the chairman a fundamental change in the manner and focus of our development for this year, Benoit and I took to SCL and spent 2 or 3 hours. I don't remember how long.
About 3.
Would have been good to look at that before I came here. To just shoot on everything. Talk about everything under the sun. Figure out what these changes really meant and stuff like this. And we said at the end of that show that we'd be back in roughly about 6 months. So 6 plus 2 is 8. It's 9. Would you expect anything less?
That's right.
So we're back. We're back today. Do a quick recap. All right. First, the Earth cooled. Then the dinosaurs came. Now we're back to talk about a whole variety of topics. This is not your traditional Q&A show where we take questions from the community, although if we see some good questions in the Twitch chat, we might throw them in from time to time. This is our interview format. So we have worked out a series of topics that we want to cover. Based on our previous conversations, we expect this show to go a bit long. So, if you got someplace to go, be sure to check out the YouTube replay later. If you'd rather listen to or read an AI summary or something on Reddit, I mean, I can't stop you. But yeah, you're going to do what you're going to do. We're going to do what we're going to do. Let's jump into it. Let me start by introducing our guest, the man who needs no introduction, but we're going to do it anyway. Chief Technology Officer, Mr. Benoit Beausejour. Benoit, how you doing, man?
It's getting better every time. Your pronunciation, it's always going up. It's great. I feel good. I feel good.
Well, I appreciate that. Well, who did we? We just hired, just added somebody to my team, and I've never she's worked for me for about 6-7 weeks now, and I've never once tried to say her last name out loud because I'm afraid.
It's okay. You can do it.
She's not watching the show, so she doesn't know I'm talking about her now.
Good.
Benoit, who are you and what do you do for Star Citizen?
Well, I am a developer, and I am the Chief Technology Officer for CIG. That means that I oversee everything technical, so gameplay engineers, engine engineers, graphic engineers, AI engineers, everybody who touches a computer almost, That's basically my job.
And how much of everything that's wrong is your fault?
Well, people on Spectrum would say everything. But yeah, I mean, basically, I empower all the teams to build the game, and so technically everything kind of is my fault in a way,
Balt's fault.
That's right.
Fault. All right, so like I said, we got a lot to talk about today. Who knows how long it's going to take, because it's not like we have any time to rehearse or hash any of this stuff out ahead of time. So we're just going to jump into it.
We'll do it live.
We'll do it live. So part 1 of this show that I'm inventing right now in my head,
yeah.
I want to call part 1 the year of playability. So the year of playability is not necessarily a statement that we ever made. We didn't say it in the February show or whatnot. But it comes from that letter from the chairman that went out at the end of last year with I think it was like 2025, a focus on playability. It's a fair assessment of the mission that we set out for ourselves at the end of last year. Have we during the February show? Remember, guys, we're figuring this out as we go along. It's been a busy week. So during that show, we talked a lot about how Star Citizen had been going in one direction for about 10 years. Since the launch of the PU at the end of 2015 and up until the end of 2024 and whatnot, roughly about 10 years there. We were on one kind of mentality. We were on one. It changed a bit with when 3.0 came out after that big long period where we didn't ship for 8 months and my beard went crazy and whatnot. But we went to this very feature driven. We were on this very feature driven, building the foundation of the game kind of attitude for so many years where we didn't take a whole lot of opportunities to stop and look at what was out there and spend time on fixing that and hardening that and stuff like that. It was always about, we got to get the next thing out. We got to get the next thing out. We got to get the next thing out because we have many of the same thoughts our backers do. It's like you got to get this stuff out. We decided that in 2025, because of the impending release of Squadron 42 in 2026, and the need to let those people focus on that and getting that closed out and whatnot, we were going to allow the engineers that remained on their focuses remained on Star Citizen to take a step back from new feature work and look at hardening and fixing and addressing a lot of the long-standing issues. Now, I said a lot. I didn't say every. It's as many as we can within the time. It's a 10-year journey towards one direction doesn't get turned around and fixed in 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. And we said this at the time. Nonetheless, there's still people who, we see the same comments, guys. We see the same things like, oh, so much for the year of playability. That was literally my brother. I'm not making fun of anybody else. I'm literally quoting my brother. And if you've ever met my little brother, that's exactly how he sounds, because he plays the game. He plays the game, and I get crap for my little brother. It's not just the backers. It's you, Clark. Welcome to the show. So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about that. It's how all little brothers sound, at least in our heads. At least in our heads. I just wanted y'all to I want to make sure everybody knows I was making fun of one specific individual that I share genes with.
I also sound like that sometimes when I talk to John Crew. Like, what about my ship?
So let's talk about this year of playability and how it's gone so far. We said we'd check in six months later. We're roughly here. How's this year of playability gone? What have we done? What have we achieved? Where are we at in our process? Are we happy? Benoit, you do the Benoit thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I want to go a bit further out than just the beginning of the year, right? Because let's take same date last year. Right?
Okay.
So let's go full 1 year back. The state of the game 1 year in the past was still single server DGS, right? So we're talking about maximum 100 players per game shard, one server simulating all of the universe, no second star system, right? So only one star system. Server performance, not good.
4 or 5 frames.
Yeah, I mean, if you're lucky,
right?
Lucky.
Like when you load it in.
Like the parameters for us to launch a patch was basically 7-ish, which is horrible if you think about it. And so that was last year, right? So we start from far, right?
We were still in the clutches of 30K.
We were still in the clutches of 30K, correct? So we did have some level of server recovery, but a lot of issues related to it that could have side effects. Some of them are still present. We'll talk about some of those. And so, fast forward to now, like the assessment is a lot better, I think, in my mind, right? Like, obviously we've had the release of 4.0. Like, it's been a bit of a roller coaster. I'm not saying it's been just a straight line. Like we've taken some dips and then improved the stability and the quality of the game overall. But obviously we have the 4.0 release, which came with static server meshing, which was the element that we needed to free up server performance, right? So on average now, when we look at server perf, I mean, other than some egregious problems which we've identified, we get per territory stats now. So basically, we don't just get like server FPS is X, right? We're gonna know Stanton server FPS is X, or Hurston server FPS is Y, and so we can compare depending on which territory, what performance we're getting. And FPS is just one of those parameter, right? There's a lot more. But let's stick to FPS just because it's a simple mental model, right? Because it does have an effect on your gameplay. So nowadays, on average, server FPS is up 20 easily, right? Obviously, some zones, like let's say when we launched, I think Stormageddon, there were some issues affecting those zones that made those servers like dip below that quite a bit, and so they drag the average down. But overall, the game server performance is way, 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 way better. And I think having 600-700, we've pushed up to 800 players per shard, which is something we're pushing at right now. We'll talk about this if we talk about server meshing a bit more. And so we're going to be pushing this really hard moving forward. But I think that if you compare last year to this year, in my mind, it's not the same game. Completely not the same game. Like now, if we look at even the stats from our players, like session length is up like 10x. It's not even comparable.
Yeah.
So that means people play for longer periods of time and they stay online. I think server recovery is a big help for that. Though the stability of the game server is also improved dramatically. And so, this is all because of the efforts of the changes that we've done, not only to the priority calls, like you just explained, right, which is taking, where we're going and trying to slowly shift it to change direction, because a team like this of this size doesn't switch on a dime. It takes a long time for these changes to trickle in. But now that we've got kind of the big organizational changes in, that we're starting to see it and reap the rewards of it, which is I hope is showing in the game. Anyway, it's showing for me, so I'm seeing it. So that's so compare 1 year back to now, I think it's night and day. There's still a long ways to go. I'm not saying we're happy with this. I'm just saying,
there's folks in the chat specifically talking about, okay, well, let's go do Hathor and let's go do this, and you alluded to that there. You're talking about a macro sense throughout the entire persistent universe, every single aspect of the game. It's to call out specific, this specific area is bad and this specific area is bad. That's not what we're talking about. We acknowledge that and stuff, and those are areas that still need improvement stuff. As we do this Russian nesting doll kind of conversation and go down, we'll start drilling down to individual aspects later in the show. At its broadest though, overall, the things that would just prevent people from being able to log in, the things that would prevent people from being able to stay in, those larger scale issues that. It doesn't matter if you fix the other things, if you're constantly getting a 30K, if you're constantly getting kicked out, if you constantly can't get back in. It doesn't matter if we've improved Hathor performance if you can't get to Hathor. Those bigger things are what we're talking about here, and those have seen some measurable, marked improvements. I mean, an improvement from 4 to 5 FPS to 20 FPS is huge. Nobody even talks about 30K stuff anymore. Server recovery is... I mean, it's hard to make a trailer or anything. We sat there. Back when we thought about how do we make a trailer for server recovery and stuff, and then it's like we did it for 2 reasons. And I'm going to talk a little bit here about why marketing pushes some things and doesn't push some other things. One is there's no real interesting way to show it without you've all seen the server recovery screen. You're sitting there and doing that, but also I'm just going to be real. We're only 13 minutes into it. Let's get to a real moment of truth here right now. Over the course of the 11 years I've been here, we sometimes toot the horn like we've invented something that honestly should be standard. It should be standard. It's if we were doing things different, if we had different priorities at this point or whatever, that would have just been a thing we would have had before. So we couldn't have server mesh, we couldn't have server recovery before because we had to. It was part of the whole nesting architecture within meshing stuff. We had to build an infrastructure before you could have a recovery that would bring that stuff back. So the way that we chose to do things meant that some things couldn't come till later. I mean, there's people again. We'll talk a little bit about org stuff and stuff. We still don't have orgs in our game and stuff. Those are things that are foundational that you would find in day one of other MMOs, and we're here 10 years into the PU and we still don't have it. So I want to be real clear that when we talk about this and we celebrate our achievements, and I'm really proud of our achievements this year, the stuff that Benoit said are real. This year is a night and day difference from last year. I think anybody being real candid and honest with themselves would admit that. At the same time, I want to be candid and honest and be like, I don't want to pretend like this was we invented the wheel and whatnot. This was the change that Chris set out for us last year. It's, hey, let's slow down, let's refocus, and let's find those things that we lost along the way and catch back up. Does that mean a slowdown on new features? Yeah, it does, and it has all year, as we said it would in February. But just a little reality check for everybody. I want you to talk about how we did it, though. We're going to spend some time. We're going to talk about freight elevators and all that stuff right now. But up here at the top, though, how did we do this change? What were the organizational changes and the operational changes that we did that made this possible and that are going to continue for the foreseeable future?
Well, so there's a series of things like company-wide that have had to change for this to happen. The first one, we talked a little bit about this in January, which was the idea of having hero cards or Joker cards, I call them, on specific issues, right? And so we've and then it was funny because people were like, give the Joker card to this other bug, right? And I was like, yeah, that's basically what we do. But we've extended that concept a bit further. And I hate that we changed the name, but we did change the name, and then we call those hero squads now. So what we've done is that we've taken a subject, for example, transit, right, which we've extensively talked about in January, and we've made a hero squad around it. So that means we've dedicated resources just to all the bugs related to one system, right? And we've changed the methodology. So the way that we used to deal with bug fixes in the past, it's basically engineers get the bug report, they put it in their task list. At some point, they emit the fix and they ship it in a patch. Now, as the patch release comes closer and closer, those bugs get verified and or need to be accelerated. And so it's always a bit of the fixes are valid, they're correct, but we don't have time to test them fully. We've had a lot of regressions, right? And so regression was becoming a problem because we were going too fast to try to solve some issues. And so some systems like transit are complicated enough that you can't just emit the fix.
I want to pause you there. What is regression?
Regression is when I say I fixed bug X and I've created bug Y.
Okay.
So it's basically when we're introducing new bugs or breaking other things because we try a fix. Okay. And so regression was a big problem on the project in general. It was in part because of the speed at which things were going, the code review process, things like this. So these hero squads, basically we flipped a bit the relationship. So we decided that fixing issues, let's say I'm going to keep transit as my hero squad example because it's an easy one to reason, but we've put resources dedicated to it. And then we got the QA teams to basically derive the priorities within the squad. So instead of saying, hey, production management is going to, drive the priorities, we got the QA leads to do that. And so now these guys were completely driven by player impact. And so when they look at issues, they're like, is this impacting players or is it a fringe issue, right? And they decided on the priority. And it turned out that priority accuracy was a lot better. And we asked those teams to be relentless into what they want to reach. And so classify the issues in order. And then the moment we get a green light from these guys, it's a celebration because they are hardcore.
I've seen a lot more Nathaniel Fisher this year than I ever saw.
The Nathaniel Fisher seal of approval is a real thing,
I want to inject. Brunks 76 says Benoit is wrong. Regression is when old issues resurface.
Yes, that's also a definition that works. But we use the same word for both at CIG. But you're kind of correct. The proper definition is that's an old issue that comes back. But in this case, the thing is the issues are so close by, and typically it is resurfacing an original issue. That's actually one of the issues with those big systems is that bug reports are so similar. but are sometimes completely different circumstances. But
yeah, two things, three things, four things that all cause the same outcome.
Same symptom. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So hero push squads. We got
Correct.
that. The embedded green light is what you just got done talking about. You know, letting QA sort of manage their priorities and green light things.
No, that one's a bit of a separate one actually. Right. So the hero squads is really about getting our QA team to drive the priority on a specific subject and drive down, right? One of the change in methodology for the devs on those team is like a bit of a change in approach. We in code review for in these hero squads, we no longer just accept the fix based on code change. We ask the developer to explain what the problem is. Can you reason at why this is happening? Second, propose a change, right? And then the leads can validate this change before we start even writing any code for it. And then we verify the change with QA. And then that's when we actually allow the change to come into the stream at all, right? So we do a lot more work before the work is actually started, a lot more work before validation before it actually gets submitted. And so on those teams, like developers working on those hero push squads have a much more methodology to apply to solve that, because basically in the past the regression rate was too high.
Right.
And so the big advantage of that setup is that those teams are faster to react because they're dedicated on one subject. And so if there is a regression, because they still happen, they're faster to pick it up. But then the fixes are slower to put in. But that still has been very effective. So Transit is one of our hero push squads, which to me has been kind of successful since the beginning of the year. Like I think the transit system, we're going to talk a bit more about it later. It's in a much better shape. The embedded green light is what you just talked about, which is that was a major organizational change. And so in the past, the way that game devs at CIG on the Star Citizen would work is that they would submit and test later. And now, I know that sounds crazy, but it is what it is. It was what it was. And so at the beginning of the year, we set to completely change this. And so we added this embedded green light process. So what is an embedded? So embeddeds are QA testers that are embedded in a dev team. So it's not, everybody has a view of like there's a floor of QA people, and then they'll receive a build and they test the build and stuff like that, right? But there's another class of testers that are embedded in teams, and they become specialists in what that team is doing, right? So, if you have an embedded tester in the FPS weapon team, those people know all about FPS weapons, how to test them, what change affect what, and so they can judge what they have to test. So the embedded green light is we gave that team the power to red light any change before it's submitted. And so that's a big culture shift, because it used to be hot and fast, get it in, we'll test and fix later, right? If there's issues, and we trust devs. We don't trust devs. We need to verify. We need to check it, right? And the whole point of this was to hit on regression or side effects, right? Because our rate of regression and side effects was extremely high, right?
I want to I'm just picturing the comments. Somebody can screenshot Benoit and say, Benoit Beausejour 2025, we don't trust devs. Go ahead. Right there. Do it right there. Right there.
Yeah.
No, I mean, we've had embedded QA for years. This was about empowering them, in order to be a bulwark against letting this stuff through. Another new term I heard this year, hygiene initiatives. Now, when I heard this was coming up, I thought it was something else. Anybody that's worked in a game studio knows that every once in a while there's that desk you walk by and you're like, I thought I knew what this was about. It wasn't what I thought it was about. Right. What are hygiene initiatives?
So this is not about BO, if that's what you're referring to. But hygiene is a collection of initiatives related to cleaning up errors, logs, and in general, just reports we get from the game engine that can signify errors or not. So if anybody's ever opened a console in Star Citizen, you probably went, whoa, what the hell's going on, right? Because there's tons of messages going through, all kinds of stuff. Well, that's what hygiene is meant to clean up in a way, right? Now, these things will take us a long time to clean up algorithmically, but we do have the same problem of signal to noise ratio in other areas. So like when environment artists are working in the editor, they get level warnings, right? Well, there's a ton of those warnings that are either irrelevant, asserts, warnings, right, and errors. And so the issue is, level artist is going to get some warning. He's like, can I do anything about this, right? Oh, there's 50,000 of them. Probably I don't have to worry about this, right? The reality is one of those is actually an issue, right? And so the hygiene initiatives is like a collection of things that we need to change in how we build the game to clean up these things so that the errors are meaningful. We have the same thing on the data core side. So for those who don't know, the game data, so all the records we use to configure, the components or all the game data, right, is stored in a database called data core. And there's a ton of errors in data core that are reported, schema violation, things like that, that they're not fatal errors, but they're still there, and we allow them to be there, and that's historical in the past. And so the hygiene initiative is a means for us to reach zero errors in those areas so that we can then prevent them from even being submitted in the first place. So hygiene is basically pre-submit verification on things and concerted efforts to solve these things so that we can be in a clean house. It's like we want to clean the house, right? So that we can do better.
Somebody in the chat was saying, I missed it, the name. It said errors that should be warnings, warnings that should be infos.
Yeah.
Pretty common.
Bad classifications of things. So we even have now systems put in place in the assert dialogues and that pop up so that you can report a bad error.
You can report a bad error?
Literally, now we get reports for bad errors so that devs can go in and fix the wording or change the severity or things like this.
And there was something we did so that certain teams, if the pop-up was directly related to them, they couldn't just dismiss it and continue with their work.
Yeah, so that's exactly right. So I feel like an AI when I say that now. You're absolutely right. But we changed the way the assert dialogues work. So asserts, for those who don't know, is like when I'm a programmer and I'm asserting in an area of the code that this value must be set to 1. That means that if the value comes in and it's not 1, then we'll have an error, right? That will show up. That's the assert error. And typically you need to action asserts, right? And so, or something else is going to go wrong. And so historically, the assert dialog was just a global thing. And then we still have those get assigned to dev teams. So they are classified by code owners and by dev team. And so you can know if like it's an audio assert or if it's a, programming assert or whatever, which is great. But we allowed people to ignore those either completely or just skip them, right? And on the other hand, when you're actually testing the game or playing the game, you get these asserts, so you want to ignore them because you're doing something else. You're not in assert fixing mode. And so what we've changed the relationship towards the assert inside the company so that now you can ignore errors for any other team but yours. So if you get an assert error, you need to fix it. That's it, right? There's just no, because the thing that we were seeing in the company was like basically teams going like, oh, when are these, I'm going to pick on audio, but sorry, Graham and team, I'm not picking on you guys, it's just random. But like, when are the audio guys going to fix their asserts, right? Whereas, the reality is like we all have our own asserts to fix. And so we changed that relationship as well.
Yeah, it's, again, over years and years, you get this mentality. So it's like I just need to do my work, and the game is telling me there's an error, there's an assert for some unrelated thing. Like what I'm working on doesn't have anything to do with that. Doesn't have anything to do with that. So you smash it. You smash. It's just like selecting all cookies because GDRP made the rule that now everybody's got to announce their cookies on your website. Now I just accept all of them. All you've done is you've made me hit a button. We get in this habit of hitting button and people, and this is one of those things like. People, we're admitting this here, guys. Talking about where's open development. I'm like, well, we're sitting here saying that too many people got in the habit of clicking the button. It's
we even found some. I'm not going to blame anybody, but we've got analytics inside the company, so we know who's putting asserts off, right? And so we found some shit.
Paul Rendell, I miss you. No, I'm just kidding. No. That's certainly not fair.
Paul's a good guy.
No, he's a good guy.
He's the one putting the shit in.
I didn't know he was here either. I ran into him today. He gave me a hug. I'm like, oh, I didn't know I was on hugging terms with Paul Rendell. That's nice. All right, so we've talked hero push squads. We've talked embedded green light. We've talked these hygiene initiatives that all help the way in which we make the game and make the patch and make our content stuff. We also started an initiative. I want to keep this under organizational stuff, but tell me if I'm wrong. The stability score. Things. Talk to me about our internal stability scores and how we've determining them and how we're using them.
Yeah. So stability score is, I don't think we've ever discussed this publicly.
No, I don't think so.
So we have this measure, which is an indication that we use, and the team that actually comes up with this would already tell you it's alchemy, right? Like it's not an exact science, but it does give us a pretty good idea. So we try to establish a stability score for every build, right? We actually auto-calculate it based on the data that we get.
Not patch, every build.
Every build, yeah, every build. So like we send a build to PTU, or QA or staging environments or whatever, and we always have a stability score that's calculated over time. And so what the stability score is, without going, I don't want to go into the alchemy of it, but we're trying to figure out basically the stability of the environment. And so if you're connected to a game server and you get disconnected, we're going to count that, right? Now, the reason for your disconnection will be used as part of that. How long the build has been running is also part of that equation, and the concurrency of it is also part of it. And so with this black magic numbers, right, we basically get a score out of it. And the score is one thing. Now we've put labels on this. So we used to use the score internally as just a number, like, oh, it's a 0.0 and it's a 0.08 build, and then at some point I got a bit fed up with that because I'm like, what does that mean? And so the values for this are optimal, excellent, stable, unstable, volatile, crippled, or critically unstable. So that's the range, right? So we go from optimal, which is great, stability score, to critically unstable, right? And all of the thing in between, right? And this is based on, all the stats that we get, and we kind of auto-calculate it. Now, we still have Jeffrey Pease, our internal alchemist, always, playing around with these numbers or adjusting the score, telling us how bad we're doing it. But it is actually pretty accurate in terms of like what the perceived stability will be from a player's perspective. And so if I compare, what was September 11th last year? Was it like 323 or maybe 4 at that point, right? 323 or 4, I forget which one. I would say like the stability score for 323X was probably in the kind of unstable range, right?
Okay.
That would be a normal range for the 3.2X, this kind of thing, right? So the stability score, server score for 4.30, for example, is between optimal and excellent. And so that means the rate of server crashes and disconnections overall is really good. Now, this score is not just server crashes, right? It's also client crashes or client disconnection, right? So if everybody gets disconnected because one of our cloud routers dies, then the stability score of the build will be terrible, even though the servers are up and they're running real fine, right? So it kind of encompasses everything. We're trying to get one number for all of it.
What was the stability score for a 318?
That was critically unstable. Yeah, I mean, it's funny because actually the server, if you just took the server score for 318, it wasn't that bad, but it's everything before it. That's why it was so critical in the 318 areas. It's because it was really a massive backend, problem at the time. So yeah, let's not talk about that. We're past that now. But
the two things we don't talk about: that damn holiday live stream and Alpha 318.
That's right.
At least Alpha 318 had to happen. At least that had to happen in order to get everything that came after it. There was nothing about the holiday live stream that needed to happen. So,
you don't want the makeup? Let's go back with the makeup. Okay. So that's the stability score, right? So that's an interesting measure, and I mean that proves that we've kind of really improved the crash rate on game servers, so the server errors that you get. Now, we need to do more on the stability score because with static server meshing, even the stability score is sometimes skewed. We have run into area local crashes that would crash loop a server, right, nonstop. And so that really contributes badly to the overall score of the build, but that's because it's one area. So we're discussing how we can do more territory-based scoring as well, so that we can get a better idea. So basically, what I'm saying is we can't get an actual just single number for all of the stability stuff. There's always some factors that, we've had AMD drivers or NVIDIA drivers issues that affected stability scores in some builds, and so yeah.
So how do we use that to determine whether a build goes live? Like, is there this? It's I see these. I see an aspect. Let's just pull the curtain way back. Why not?
Yeah.
I see the question. Is it worse than what's on live now? I see this question come up a lot in internal conversations. When, let's just be real. If we tried to wait for everything to always be optimal, we'd release very few things.
Correct.
That's
the nature of shipping a game that's in development.
Yeah, I'm not going to sit here try to hide or pretend otherwise. But so we know that not everything is going to be optimal. But where do we draw that line? How do we draw that line? And is it more than just, is it worse than what's currently on live?
No, we always try to shoot for better than live, right? When we can. But there's a lot of things that we look at to be able to ship a patch, right? Now, obviously, for this year, it was a very big change for the development teams, because moving to a 4-week cycle means that we are always shipping. Like, how we have a ship date, right, that we give ourselves, and a schedule, and then we've got our gate reviews, and everything is like chained up to get there. Well, the closer you get to this date, right, when you get from the player's perspective, when you guys see like daily PTUs go, and it's always update, that's because we're getting close to the release, right? And so we're trying to get to the date, and we're trying to validate all the things we need to validate as fast as possible. The focus is really on shipping. So even minor issues become top priority, right? And so it's been really difficult for the teams this year to keep up with this, because we finished a patch like, yay, okay, we're late for the gate review. Like literally, it's going like this. And obviously we balance this across multiple teams, but there are teams that unfortunately are, they're on everything, and so they're always on it.
Yeah, I think it gets lost sometimes. Of the many things we changed this year, we've shipped 8 or 9 patches this year.
Yeah,
it depends on whether you count what happened in April as a patch or not. But we've shipped at least 8 patches this year, and in years past, from the 3.0 era on, it was 4 a year. If we were like some 1 or 2 years, we only hit 3 and whatever. And now we've done 8 in this year. The velocity change has been tremendous. And it's helped, if I may, it's helped expose aspects of this. And when I say this, I mean making all of this. It's helped expose aspects of this that we're pretty good at, and it's helped expose aspects of this that we still struggle with and still need to improve. And just what you were saying just really hit home with that. We're in the process now of discussing adjusting the patch cadence for 2026. It's way too early to give any details on that. Nothing's decided. Yeah. But yes, this has been a pretty relentless pace, and there's a patch coming out in September. There'll be a patch coming out in October. There'll be a patch coming out in November, and then there'll be a patch coming out in December. So it's certainly a year unlike any other.
Now, one of the things we didn't discuss about for this, in order to reach the stabilities, there's also internal stability, right, that comes into play with this.
I'm not familiar with internal stability. I've never had any myself.
Well, so this one is a bit more subjective because we don't specifically have a score for it. But if I go back to last year, right, the way we would develop the game, and I don't want to go too deep in the discussion about source control and streams and all that stuff, because that's just a rabbit hole. But in general, when we work, we have a mainstream where we work in, right? In the past, this was a melting pot of everything. So core technology, editor, toolings, audio teams, content teams, gameplay teams, art, everything, right, in one stream, right? And the fallout from that is that you go a bit faster because you're building things, you're improving the tools as you're improving the gameplay, as you're improving everything. But the reality is we also had major internal stability issues, which is imagine that you're an environment artist. You show up at work, you make your little coffee, you pull the morning build. You're like, all right, I'm ready to work on my ASD mission today. It's going to be super cool. Editor crash, right? And now, oh yeah, the team's already on it. We're fixing it, but you just lost 2 hours. Right?
Yep.
And so we had major issues with this, right? And so when we started the year last year, when we did the show, just after the show, I think we went and finished this new branching strategy where all of the patches this year have come out of the same stream that we call SC patch. And this patch receives almost no technology update.
Yep.
It's basically us saying we can do this content with no new engine tech, no editor update, no tooling update, nothing. Right now, that's not to say we are not touching the engine. We've fixed bugs, we've improved stability, but we bring these things, embedded green light, full verification, tooling check before they go in. And so it's really about moving all these checks beforehand so that we don't destabilize the content teams who are they're under the gun all the time to produce the stuff that they have to, and we don't want to slow them down. And so that's another reason for why the stability is better. It's because we are also not introducing massively breaking changes in the engine that we then need to debug at patch time, right? And so that's been a big helper on stability at the cost of features, right? That was the whole point of the year, really, so far.
And now we're changing some of that with tech preview. I want to hit one more thing before we go into a tech preview and stuff. Features are going to begin. Yes, Virginia, it's true. Features are going to begin appearing again in. I won't say the word soon, but they're coming. Before I get to tech preview, because that was a really good transition into tech preview, but I want to touch on one more thing. You mentioned the rise in session length.
Yep.
So this is one of those metrics that we've talked a lot about. We're 40 minutes in. We've mentioned a lot of things that have probably never been said on a single development a show before, or podcast, or whatever the heck you want to call this. We don't have to talk about session length. The amount of people who are logging in. You hear about concurrency. Steam has concurrency numbers and stuff, but session length is a super important metric for stability and for enjoyment of the product and stuff like this. Talk to me about session length, how it's determined, other than just, hey, that's how long the person's in there, why it's important, and what's happened to that over the last 9 months.
Well, so, let's say the session length is calculated by you joining a game server.
Hold on, I'm sorry. Spicy SCO7 says 40 minutes in, said virtually nothing.
Okay.
Yeah, I stopped the whole show.
Sure.
Stopped the whole show for that. Continue, Benoit.
I was saying the session length is calculated when you connect a game shard, right? So sitting on the main menu doesn't count, right? It's really when you're actually actively connected to a game server, and obviously it ends when you disconnect. So that sounds like a simple metric, and it kind of is, but it's very important because it gives you an idea of, like, you can have very high concurrency and a very short session length, and that means that's a terrible patch. It means people are going in. Let's talk about the patch we should not talk about, when you would get in game, if you could get in game, and then can't get out of bed, Alt F4, end of session, super high concurrency but very low session length. And so the session length is a bit of an indicator of the quality of the game, but also of the desire of the player to keep playing the game. And so the longer the session length, it typically means that, the content's being engaged with, players are playing the game, blah, blah, blah. Now, I'm sure, some people go out in deep space and they mine, and that's it. And they can mine 4 hours and they pull the average up. Other players, go PvP for a couple minutes, and then they exit, and then, they drive the average down. But overall, the session length is like it's always a metric that we look at as a secondary metric to look at the quality of this. And so the session length has more than doubled since the 3.x era of the game, easily, right? And obviously, in the case of server recovery, your session continues, and so that helps, quite a bit, because before it would cut the session in half. So there's other factors that contribute to it, but that's why it's an important one.
Okay, so now I want to talk about tech preview. So we we used Tech Preview when we launched 4.0. Technically, 4.0 didn't launch until end of January this year. That's when it went to live. It was on Tech Preview at the end of last year. And we made these statements that we were going to use Tech Preview in order to bring these new things in and maintain the stability of live. It took 8 months. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think we did a Tech Preview between January and late August, early September. Yeah. And now we're using them for the Vulkan stuff and the graphic stuff. Talk to me about Tech Preview, why we're doing it, how it's working, and let's just start there. I'll follow up when you're done.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's start with we didn't have Tech Previews in, let's say, April of last year, right? We started this idea of having Tech Previews last year, right? So it's a new kind of tool that we have. And obviously, we use Tech Previews in the server meshing lead up, right, to validate key assumptions, to actually isolate the testing. If you remember when we did the major technical previews on the 3x branch for server meshing, it was taking the actual previous build with server meshing technology. So uninfluenced by new code, uninfluenced by the current patch, something we know is kind of in a stable range that we can use to test the technology alone, right? It's also a way to de-risk, just again bringing that in the stream and then going Cortez maneuver. Now we're stuck with it. We're moving forward, but and so the Tech Preview has been invaluable for that, and especially for the server meshing project, that's been a super important tool, because we just don't have always the ability to replicate what players are going to do, and to be honest, even with bots and virtual players and whatever, it's never the same then 4,000 players filling ships with hot dogs,
And right now we're using it for graphic stuff. How's that going?
Yeah, so this Tech Preview that we're bringing in is more than that, actually, like behind the scenes, right? This is literally, I told you about the SC patch, so all the patches this year have been coming from SC patch. The Tech Preview contains all changes that we've brought to our mainstream. This is where the engine development happens. This is also where we bring back some technology from Squadron 42 back into Star Citizen. And we are moving all of this together up to SC patch. So this will now become, when we're happy with all the testing that we got through on this, and it checks all the green lights, this will become the new baseline from which we build patches. And so right now, this includes, about 8 to 9 months of graphics changes, right, which have not seen the public yet. And so a lot of Vulkan changes, obviously, to the great pleasure of our great Ali Brown, who really wants us to finalize this merge so that we can bring this into players. And there's some great stuff in there. So a lot of Vulkan optimization, Vulkan changes, but also in a way for us to test all of these changes that we've been doing to the core engine rendering outside of the lab, because we have a graphics lab internally that we test on, but it never, there's never anything like shipping it to players and having all the different kinds of hardwares and configs and settings and driver versions that we need. And so the majority of the stuff in this Tech Preview is player facing, but there's a ton of back-end tooling that comes with that. A major update to the editor with some new material addition systems and light group systems that are in dire need of coming in, and a major upgrades to our scripting system that power missions, right, which the mission teams are Elliot and his team are like, when is it going to be done
for that? Yeah, no.
Yes,
that's I'm glad you brought that up, because I had actually forgotten that underneath that, it looks like it's just for the graphics, everything, but yes, no, the mission, we call it mission 2.0. We call it a couple different things internally, but they are chomping at you already said that. I'm reusing the same. Sorry, I saw a comment from Salty and Mike that said, talk about session girth, and I laughed and wasn't listening to anything you were saying for like 30 seconds.
Okay,
because
that's cool.
It's a good joke.
It's a good joke.
It was a good joke.
Now, to be clear on the mission tooling there, right? This is part of mission 2.0. It's a prerequisite, but it's not the mission 2.0 system. That's a much larger endeavor that we're still on. But this time it's tooling, right? So if some players are tech savvy here, it's basically a visual scripting system that we're upgrading massively, which was, I think we've demoed this years ago at this point, but it's called the Subsumption at the time, and it's now called StarScript. And so the StarScript system is basically taking, the tooling that the teams are using now and making it much more reliable, robust with syntax checking, error checking, validation, auto layout, stuff like that the teams really need to build more quality missions.
I'm sorry, let me get this straight. You took a new feature set and you took the base word for it and then added star in front of it and called it that?
No, we renamed Subsumption, which was the original name, and then we put star in front of it. Yeah, exactly. That's right. Hey, we have a theme, all right? We're going with it. I'm rolling with it.
As long as you're willing to get called out by me every time you do it. All right. This tech preview is obviously important. It'll be in tech preview for as long as it needs to be in order to shore up and then be integrated and then become the new base from which we create our patches from. What is the next tech preview? Go ahead, say it.
Well, so what's behind this, right? This enables us to bring in, I'm going to go back to streaming just to build the excitement. No, I'm joking. So off of our main technology stream is another feature that's been built there that needs all of this to work. And that's the engineering gameplay tech preview. That's right behind it. So the moment we can bring in the base tech preview changes, then we'll be able to to run the next testing on engineering gameplay straight off of that patch. So that's going to be super interesting.
Yeah, so I want to be real clear with that. This is the next set of tech previews. This is. I want to go ahead and say, and I'm going to go ahead and say it so that if people can get angry at me and not you. Right now, we're using tech preview to test Vulcan and these and all these graphical stuff and all these mission changes and everything underneath and stuff like this. When this is done and get fully integrated, go to live and whatnot. The next thing is engineering. We desperately. I'm going to use the word desperately. We desperately want this tech preview with engineering out before the end of the year. Now, this is the middle of September. It's still October, November, December. That's still a lot of time. It's not any time when anybody would say soon. And that's no guarantee that we're even going to hit it. We've all been here. Somebody was joking, hey, drink it next time Jared says how long he's been here. Well, we've all been here. Lots of us. I've recognized some of these names for the whole time I've been here. We've all been here long enough to know that me saying it's our intention to get this before the end of the year is not the same as saying it will come before the end of the year. Just being honest with you here, but it is everybody's desperate intention to get this thing into tech preview at the end of the year. We want it. We need it. We're tired. We did 5-6 stories in engineering. I did like 2 or 3 citizen cons with engineering. It's time. 300, kick that mother out under tech preview, please. So we're trying. But I just want to make sure that everybody's super clear on what that means.
Hey, but on this, I got a little segue for you.
All right.
So there's one thing that kind of proves the improvements, right, on the live service is that there's a lot less players on PTU and there's a lot less players on tech previews than before, which is a good thing, right? That means players want to play the real game, and I'm really happy about that. But it does mean if you want to help, join those tech previews, right? The more people we get, even if it's for a short period of time, it's really helpful because we get a more larger set of people that can try it out, and that gives us more data.
Yeah, I want to talk about something. I got to show you sparked something that's actually a bugaboo for me, and okay. I got a platform and I'm going to use it. So we did this change. We did this change this year. We went to what will be 10 or 11 patches throughout the entire year. This almost monthly cadence of live stuff. So you've got the live stuff, a new live thing going every month. People are like, put something new in the game. We've had a thing new every month. We've had a PTU every month that runs alongside it. Now we've got tech preview. This pace that we're at this year has forced us to split our audience and stuff like this. It's like, well, do you want to be playing the live game, or would you rather be playing the PTU version, or now with tech preview, would you rather be playing tech preview? And the reality is, we need everybody everywhere. The live version is the version of the game that we're making. That's the version we want. We want everybody to experience it. But we also need them for testing, so we want them to be in PTU. We also need them for the specialized testing, so we want them to be in tech preview. And it seems and this is one of the reasons why I talked earlier that we're reevaluating the 2026 release schedule for this reason. We've created a situation where we want our players in too many places at once, if I'm allowed to speak honestly, and I'll find out when I check my team's messages afterwards. Well, it's a thing that needs addressing, so and it's hard. It's hard. I don't know. Short of altering the schedule, which we're talking about, what more can we do to encourage people to participate in PTU and tech preview, other than us sitting here on the show and begging them? Is there something?
Yeah, we've got some ideas. To be honest, like we're toying with a few ideas, like incentivization programs or things like that. But this is slippery slope. You know, it's a very slippery slope. And for me, I kind of like the kind of volunteer approach for this.
Yeah.
But you're right. Like we do have an issue where, we're testing this and we have the next patch is already cooking. And so it's like, it's always rolling. I mean, at the same time, it's a testament to our ops team that I want to salute one more time, because these guys are always they're always on the clock. There's always a build going out, and so these guys are kicking ass. But
it's hard because we certainly don't want everybody playing nothing but PTU. Second a patch goes out there, the next week there's another PTU and stuff. It's like, oh, only play the worst, most broken version of Star Citizen, but we need your help testing it. But it's this weird catch-22 that I don't know that we have a real great answer for, other than adjusting the schedule, which we're looking at next year. And then it gets exasperated when we do timed events like Race for Stanton or whatnot, when it's like, okay, well, if you want these rewards that are only available during this period of time, then you have to be in live in order to get them. But then it's like, well, we got a PTU over here. Wouldn't you like to be in a PTU over here? It's like, well, no, I want to get the rewards that are over there. And we extended Race for Stanton, that helped with that a little bit, but it's just that there is no obvious answer to this. I'm pontificating on one of the interesting challenges of our development model that exists, that I don't think anybody really ever talks about publicly. And today we decided we were going to talk about a whole bunch of stuff. So
we're doing it live.
We're doing it live. It's one of those things we still need to figure out and address. BioNukes had a question. Hey, BioNukes, talk about one of those people that's been here as long as I have. It was a while back. I saved it, Bio. Why not have a set time for the servers in the back end to just reset every day? Why not just flip the switch every day, turn it off and turn it on again every day?
Well, so wait, that's one thing I forgot to put on the list of things we've changed this year, right? Which is that we take maintenance windows. We used to never do that. Now, why not do this every day, right? The issue that you get is that it's not just resetting the server. So, rebooting the servers, reloading the game shard from persistence and continuing, you're going to get right back in the same situation. So let's imagine, we're going to talk about cleanup and density a bit later, but let's go back to the 3.x days where we persist all the data in the shard and we have deep intersections. So a ship entered another ship, it's an intersection, is costing on the server. The server FPS is now shit, super low physics threads, using all the resources. And then you're like, okay, cool, let's do a daily reset, right? It's going to fix that, right? So you go through it, you reboot it. Cool. Now server reloads from persistence and those ships are still intersecting. And so you're right back where you were. So if you would look at the graphs and you'd see FPS super low, 0 during the reset, 30, 5, instantly. And so, what we've done in the past for this is now we have way more systems to deal with like this to reclaim performance, right, for these cases. So first of all, we detect them. But also we do emit fresh shards periodically. So we kind of decide when it happens. But when we do massive weekly maintenances, we don't take every week, but we do it when we have to make configuration changes or things like that. We'll take a downtime and we're probably going to emit new shards or run the repair on some of those shards. And then that will help. So we kind of do that. We just don't do it systematically because the reality is that's not completely how it works. for the backend persistence side of this. And it's not something that we can solve easily because the conditions are too great. You need the shard to be live to solve these things, to be able to do it.
What about a traditional, like, every Tuesday scheduled maintenance period, like every Tuesday at 4 a.m. Eastern time, whatever? Yeah. Things go down for 2 hours and come back.
We're going towards that now, like where we basically right now you can almost consider that every Tuesday. We try to do a maintenance. Typically early in the morning UK time is a good time in general, just because of that's where the least players are playing typically. But that said, we don't take it every week because we don't always have to do it, and so sometimes it's not very necessary. But I'm an advocate to always take it, so that sometimes we use it to accelerate hotfixes. So in case you haven't noticed, we do hotfixes all the time, right? So we have this new deployment systems now, and we're able to roll hotfixes way faster. But when we roll a game server hotfix, it's going to take time to, what's the word that Ahmed uses? Percolate. It's going to take a while before it percolates, right?
Percolate.
Yeah. And so sometimes you can have a game shard that has, 10 servers, 2 of them have the hotfix, the others don't have it. So depending on where you're at in the shard, you have the fix or not. And it takes a while before all the game servers actually run into it. Now, obviously, if it's an unstable build, it's going to be much faster because then server crash, back new instance with the new build. But these maintenance windows give us the opportunity to also synchronize that with a client hotfix when it's necessary. And so we can take everything down, patch the client, patch all the game servers in one go, emit fresh shards if we have to, and then start again. And so that's why typically there's big changes that can come about in maintenances, and we want to use them more. Yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, we've completed our first hour. And
that was part one. Organizational changes.
That was part one. Organizational changes. Let's take an interlude here. I'll ask you just a side question here. Let you get a drink or whatnot. With our last patch, what was the last patch? The August patch. 4.3. There was a big curiosity with the wolf on PTU right before we crossed the finish line. To release that, we discovered something that didn't show up in any testing and whatnot. Walk me through what happened with the wolf.
This is a beautiful one. That was fun. So yeah, like you mentioned, we're walking up to 4.3. We're at the point where pretty much everything has been validated and tested, and there's something with the wolf that we're gonna try to do more in the future. Is that we try to respect what we call the art of surprise. Is that typically beforehand we used to put everything in a patch, go. Now for certain things we want to try to respect some level of surprise. We find that it's cooler for you guys when you discover things when it goes live and not necessarily on PTU 2 weeks before, right? And so we're trying
Orange shows every week.
Orange shows every week, exactly, right? So and so the wolf is part of that. And so the wolf was going on PTU for validation because it was part of 4.3 release at the very last minute, right? So like I think 24 hours before, just to all right, make sure everything's fine. Well, it turns out everything was not fine, and so we look at the reports. There was one crash that we had to solve, which was solved rapidly, but then we looked at some very curious reports, and so players would basically report I forget the IC exactly, but something like, I landed with my wolf, exited the ship, and then was walking around. Then my friend took my wolf and flew away, and then the world despawned around me. So initially, it sounds like a fluke report, but then a bunch of people reproduced it, and it was like, I have this, and so like, what is going on? And so typically, then that's where our player relations team goes like, something's fishy on here. So we started to look into it, and so we assembled a quick crew to check this out and now this is kind of skeleton crew because we're moving to release. To typically it's very late here in the I'm in the UK right now, so it's very late here in the UK. US teams, it's night for them, so just get this crew on together, start looking at this issue. And so basically the issue that we're seeing is that sometimes, now when a bug starts with sometimes, it's going to be a fun one. So sometimes when you exit the wolf, you desync between the client and the server. And what actually happened is, if you looked at so we have this tool we call the server renderer, which allows us to basically view what the server sees, right? And so think of it like a side camera that we have when we have access to the game server, and then our game client, and you can see what the server sees. Right? And so you'd see my character get out of the wolf, with that super nice animation, exit, and he jumps at the end.
Yep.
Jumps off the ship. Wow, it's like super cool. And then I'm walking around on my client, everything's fine. Game server, I'm literally in EVA animation floating over the planet. And the thing is, I can't exit this condition, right? No matter what I'll do on my client now, the server will always see me attached to the ship in EVA anim. So we're like, okay, what's going on, right? Now we start looking at this. So at this point, John Crew and I are, losing our minds trying to get a proper reproduction. But then we realized, we put new animations for this ship. So the Wolf was one of the new ships that have enter-exit animations, right, that are brand new, like just captured, import in the game, all that stuff. We don't do this all the time. And putting animations in the game is not just put the anim in. It's like it's timing. There's events to link them. There's linking them to the actor system, how they get triggered. Inserting them into ship pipelines, stuff like that. And so we start debugging this. First step was, they probably forgot to put some of the seat events on it. So we do a first patch. We try it out. Now the QA guys come back like, no, still happens. So like, okay, now I think if the timing is wrong on these events, so let's change that. No, I think we went through like 7 or 8 iterations of fixes to try to figure out what was actually happening about that exact animation and why the ship system was disconnecting it. We went into full debugging on the actor. So the actor is your character and all the states it can go through. And we could just see the two differ, right? But it made no sense. Why is one working and the other working? So at this point, we're kind of running out of ideas. And so that's when I used a button. I called the bug smasher himself, Mark Aben, on the show. And so Mark came in and was as flabbergasted as we were about what the hell is causing this. And then so we went into a bit more debugging sessions. At this point, we're deep engine side physics and collisions to try to figure out what's going on. And then in the end, Mark just goes within, in the typical bug smasher fashion, just goes into what about gravity? And so we take a look at how the ships have physics grids. These grids have sizes and mesh sizes, and the animations is based on the geometry. And there was no gravity in the ship, 0, 0, 0, right? And so basically it was a combination of the physics grid, the fact that the actor on the server runs at a lesser resolution. So, your client, when you're in game, is at full resolution. The server doesn't run at full resolution when he's simulating your character. And so combination of this would make the server would actually reach the EVA state. So now you're floating in EVA, right? But with no gravity and no other movement, it will never solve itself. And he's also overlapping over the grid, which is too big. And so that was a bit of a combination of like blunders, from geometry to wrong physics grid to out of no gravity, and it made the bug also not 100%. It wasn't like I exit the ship and it happens. It would need to happen like it took about 10 to 15 times you would get it one time. And so, all right, so we fixed the bug. We get this in there. Internal QA validates it, and then to be able to properly validate it, as you know, we need players. And so that's where we mobilized you guys on PTU to come and try this out. And this was one of the best moments I've had testing in this game, where roughly 100 people showed up with wolves at Boondoggle on Hurston, and then 200 people are entering and exiting the wolf, right, to see if they get detached from the animation. It was a fantastic moment. And so yeah, that was a fun one to troubleshoot.
And that was your free audio only episode of Bug Smashers. As a nice little interlude there. I want to shout out Dennis Daniel, who's in chat right now.
What's up, Dennis?
Hi, Dennis. Miss you, man.
My man.
All right. Part 1, year of playability. Our little Bug Smashers interlude. Folks watching, we've got another hour or 2 left, so we're gonna be here for a bit. In case you're like, why would they talk about that? Whatever. We're getting there. Part 2. server meshing. Server meshing, past, present, future, static, dynamic, 3D. Benoit, I'm just gonna go get a Coke and a Cinnabon. I'll be back. No. Talk to me about server meshing, man.
Well, so obviously we launched server meshing end of last year, and we've been running a server mesh environment for now 7 months, 8 months, right? 9 months. We're not month 9 already. And so that's the static server mesh. And so that means we have territories. Just a quick recap for everybody. And so that means that we have a configuration for these territories, and we can pick different top-level object containers from the tree of the universe, and then we basically distribute them on different, resource servers. So at the moment, we run at a 10 game server per shard setup, and so that means that we basically distribute the key areas, on these 10 game servers, and that's how when you transition from one zone to another, it's seamless, but you're moving from one server to the other. So we've been kind of taking the year to get used to being in a server mesh environment, and so that means we've discovered a bunch of gameplay bugs related to this. I think we talked about some of those in January, but that have been solved. But for example, the quantum drive systems, didn't properly handle the transition. Sometimes we'd lose power in transition, and then that would cause the thing to reset, pull you out of quantum, things like that. That's one example, but there's a series of other issues that were related to that. But more importantly, we've been also learning about how to properly distribute the load of the simulation. So now we have this tool, we have this map. It's not the end of it right now. Every patch this year, we've changed the configuration. I don't think we've had a single static configuration since the beginning of the year. Every patch has been different. And so obviously we've tried to make sure that we dedicate resources to where there's an event, right? So if it's a SD location or Hathor locations or Stormageddon locations, we've kind of reconfigured the mesh at each release to basically guarantee some server power at each places, because we know that people congregate in these areas. We've also learned a couple of things, like because the teams that make content don't necessarily always talk to the team that make the tech, right? And so so the where you put those locations or how many there are is important, right? And so that we kind of learned that through the Hathor moments where like they were a bit too close and we couldn't distribute them properly because of other limitations, which I'll get into in a bit. And so we've changed that config every time. And so it's been really a good learning experience for the team. We've also solved a bunch of issues in the static mesh related to performance. And so we've talked about this before, but the hybrid, we talked about stability of game servers right earlier, but the hybrid is at the center of this. This is the networking component that you're connected to when you're playing the game. He's doing the replication, he's doing the binding and all that stuff, right? And for this guy, the stability score is 0. Meaning, if there's one crash, we don't ship the patch, right? That's it, right? That thing needs to run perfectly at all times.
Yeah.
And the kind of quality metrics that we expect from the hybrid are very, very intense. Like the speed at which they transfer packets or accumulate packets and transfer it, and between areas and elements has to be very, very, very fast at all times, or else you get rubber banding, you get desync, things like that. And so there's been a lot of performance improvements behind the scene, especially I think just before Stormageddon, or is it after? At this point, it's a bit of a blur. But I know that we found a couple of key optimizations that have really helped the hybrid maintain stability across some of the big binds that we were seeing. Again, binding is this process that when your client needs to bind to an area, it means he's receiving updates for an area.
Right.
This whole binding up process is a bit costly on the hybrid, especially when there's big areas being bound. And so optimizations have gone into that. And that has helped desync quite a bit. I mean, there's always room there to improve for improvement, and the team are still actively working on this. That's never going to be the end of it. But it's much improved since the release of 4.0. Like I hope the rubber banding is getting a lot better every patch. Like we're hoping to, always cut some of those big bottlenecks across as we go.
Okay.
So that's static server mesh. We also learned a couple of things on how to distribute those locations. So the cost of a location, right, and the amount of players. Like is not necessarily the same weight. Funny enough, a lot of players in the same place. Let's say you have an empty room, right, with nothing in it, and I can pack 300 players there, no problem. Server's good, right? No problem. If I add AI in there, we start getting into issues, right? If I add ships in there, bigger issues. So that if you want the cost of the location and the multiplied, not necessarily multiplied, but factored in by the number of players there is what kind of is the cost of an area, and how we should distribute we should distribute the computing power that we pay for to run the game. And so we've been learning a lot about this in all these experiments we've been doing, and that's informing dynamic server meshing, right? Meaning what the algorithm needs to be in order to properly distribute the load of the simulation to the different components in the game that can do the replication.
This weird equation. This is in all the factors of, all right, obviously how many players are there? Sure. What is the resource footprint of the location itself? Correct. Obviously. How many ships are present? Because it's not all ships are created equal. Our process of making ships have changed over the years. Some ships are more efficient than others. So it's okay. What's the resource footprint of the ships in the area? What's the resource footprint of the location itself? What's the resource footprint of the people in the area? And then where's the next closest area? Like, because with Onyx facilities, we distributed 100 of them and whatnot. But like you mentioned with Align and Mine, our one of our big learnings, we'll say learnings. It's a nicer word than mistake. Was positioning was where we put them and whatever. We weren't able to separate them into the shards that we wanted to. So being at one and being at the other one just doubled up the performance hit. Somebody in chat said it seems like everything CIG does is a test. Yes, I think that was Flymo Ninja, if I remember. Flymo Ninja. Hey man, yes, everything we do is a test. We're learning. There's a reason I used to end these shows with "What did we learn this week?" Don't ever think that no aspect of game development isn't intricately tied up with the process of learning. Not for us, for you, for everybody. It's like this. So yeah, we are learning as we do this, and that's what Benoit's talking about it. So dynamic server meshing tomorrow, next week. What you got?
So no, well, I'm not going to advance a date, but I can tell you that there's multiple things that compose dynamic server meshing, right? Obviously, the team is working on those aspects right now, right? The key aspects that dynamic server meshing will bring is so a kind of arbitrary subdivision, right? Meaning that we could assign a server to anything that's a streaming group. So inside this big tree, right? You've seen the PES discussions where we show how kind of the data is laid out in one big giant scene tree. Any of those nodes that are deemed a streaming group can actually have a server actually having authority over that entire area. And so DSM will definitely bring us the ability to kind of arbitrarily subdivide, where we're no longer tied to these territories or this territory map. That's the first big thing we're gonna gain from dynamic server meshing, and we're working on that part at the moment, right? Which is basically how we can move these streaming groups from one server to the other, authorities transferred, who's managing it, what component is taking care of that. So that's under development right now. There's also a lot of I want to say parallels or similarities between dynamic server meshing and instancing, right? And so we've talked about that we're working on instancing. That's also part of this work, right? And so we technically already have the mechanics of instancing in the game in the form of the instance hangers, right? Which basically allows you to have multiple stacked areas on top of each other, but you get to see only one, and only one of them is bound to your client and replicated to your client. Historically, if we go back in the 3x days when we put this in, initially the instancing was actually not working from the networking side, and so you would replicate all the hangars that were at that location, even though you couldn't see it, which was even worse. Now you actually get assigned the proper tag on your character, and so when you actually take the elevator, it's bringing you to an actual instance, which is basically yours. So the instance tech that we're building on top of that will basically leverage some of the concepts we're putting into dynamic server meshing, because we want to be able to distribute those instances across the mesh, right? And so Right now they're location bound, right? But we want to not be able to just have them location bound, but have any of the servers take those off, so that we can share the load. Again, optimizing the distribution of the simulation, of the computing workload that we have across what players are doing. And so that when you enter an instance, we can guarantee a certain level of performance without needing to have a little, dude at the back going like, oh, we need to change the territory map for this, right? Basically. And so we're actively working on all this stuff right now to bring us to the dynamic part of server meshing. And obviously, with that, even though this is not our focus right now, right? We are still planning to go to higher player counts, but this is totally not our priority right now. Our priority is really on getting the functionality and the computing workload properly distributed automatically. Exactly.
I'm glad you say we're not. That's not our focus at the moment. I talked earlier in the show about us sometimes acting like we invented the wheel when it's one of those things that other people, other games have had and stuff like this. Lots of games have some version of server meshing.
Yeah.
Famously, what's the other one? The Dune game, whose name escapes me at the moment. They did a big thing on their version. Awakening. They did a big thing on their version of server meshing and stuff. How is ours different than what other things? I'll give you a hint. 3D. How is ours different from what you're seeing in every other game? Just because I see this come up. I see, I watch the YouTubes and the Twitches sometimes, and I see people like, they keep acting like server meshing, they fucking invented it and whatever. Oh, there's my one swear. It came. Sorry, Tyler. Why is our server meshing different?
Well, so you're right. Like, it's not like server meshing isn't already like a thing, right? Like in the past, like even, Ultima Online had a server like transitions,
right
now they were not necessarily seamless, but you still had server transitions and gridding, right, which is a typical approach, which is you take the world, you split into a grid, and then you have servers between them. And then the rest of the different strategies come from how the servers communicate to each other, right, and how the state is distributed and how you transition from one to the other. And I think that the areas where our approach differs is that we've extracted the simulation from the game and the replication of the game. So replication is how game server and client stay in sync, right? And so when you're in an area and somebody opens the door opens on your client. That's because it's been opened on the server, and it's also because somebody else had authority to send that message to open the door. So this is all replication, right? Well, normally you have one game server and he does both replication and simulation, right? So we've taken the Star Engine, we've extracted the networking from it, so the replication into the hybrid. Now we call him the hybrid now because it's a first stage of server meshing, right? But the hybrid has all the networking components. He has the state in his memory. He holds all of the information for the shard, and he does the replication. So you're connected as a client to the hybrid. So you're not connected to the different servers you're actually on. The game server you're actually that's simulating your area is actually, you're not even on it. You're not even in active connection with that server. You're actively connected to the hybrid. And the game servers are actually clients with authority, if you want, right? If we simplify. And so that's one area where it differs. The second one is how we separate space, right? And you alluded to it, which is that our territory mappings or mappings to how the authority is managed is in 3D space. So it's not a grid. It's fully made in 3D space. And so that means that we can have it's 3D space and a tree, right? So which is the other bit. And so what that means is that by taking I'm going to try to make that simple. Let's say I'm on the yellow server, right? And suddenly the yellow server, there's not enough players there and the location is a bit low cost. Then we might want to despawn that server. Well, we can transfer the authority from everything the yellow server is doing to its parent. There is a parent, right? Whereas when you're doing gridding, that's a bit of a different model. In the past, I've seen solutions for meshing which include servers like adjacent servers talking to each other, for example, things like that. The client actually disconnecting from one server, connecting to the next, right? Which in all of these cases, these were things that created side effects that we didn't want. So in the past, we did try these things. Like if I go way back when we started the server meshing projects, that was the first approach, was like a bit more classical, but we realized to properly offer what we've shown in, for example, the meshing demo Paul did a couple of years ago, or what you're actually playing now on live, to be able to have like bullets completely traverse
right
the transition and hit on the other side of it. Like we needed to have a solution that was native to all how we were doing it. The bet behind it was that the hybrid was going to be fast enough, and so far it seems like it's working out. Though it is a lot of work to get it, to keep it at that speed with all the needs that we have. So that's I would say was the differences in the approach. And every game is going to have its own approach, right? Tailor made to its gameplay, right? So it's in our case, we're trying to make the biggest universe ever, and so we need the most scalable way to approach it. Also, we've taken the most difficult route, I feel, but
I think you need to adopt CR hands a bit more. You were doing the thing, and I kept like, no, a little server inside a bigger server. I'm like, you use your CR hands. It help. This server inside this server. So when this server disappears, the server above it can get the authority. I'm like, I'm just over here like, use the CR hands.
Oh shit! Yeah, I was a missed opportunity.
If only there was a time. If ever there was a time for CR hands.
Yeah, that's true.
All right. Any so 3D server meshing, and separating everything, so connecting people to the hybrid instead of the server, so that things can connect and carry through from one server to another server seamlessly and stuff. Anything else you want to say on server meshing before we move on?
No, I think that's pretty much the state of it. Like we're advancing on the dev for it. Obviously, we don't, we don't want to bring in destabilize changes to the game, right? And so we're making sure that these are going to be tested first. We will go to a tech preview when we feel it's the right time. Right now, it's not the right time, and so we're still working on these aspects. But that's our objective: is to, we're not going to do a big dynamic server meshing is up, right? That's not going to be how we're going to roll this out.
Right.
We will most likely be bringing elements of meshing into play, right? Like the ability to despawn servers in areas that are not being simulated, the ability to scale up the mesh dynamically from the territory map, and then later on possibly go into, then the instancing support that goes through it, and then after that, the final jewel of like dynamic resubdivision and reallocation.
Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh in the middle of what you're saying. Don't Please in the chat goes, I'm really glad I was here to see Disco's last show. I've survived this long, man. All right. So, part 3.
Big chickens.
Oh, stretch. Part 3. What is my hair doing?
It's looking fabulous from here.
Oh, weird. All right. This section I call big ticket items. These are various issues that at some point in the year have generated some amount of angst, aggression, frustration, or any other word you can think of to describe Tyler Wicken. He's watching. Let's start with the big one. Freight elevators.
Yeah.
Now I already did a big 5-minute thing explaining. Oh, there's a delay. He just popped up. Freight elevators. Where are we at now? What's happening? What happened? What do you want to tell us about freight elevators?
Let me pull up my notes.
Okay.
So freight elevators is one of our hero squads, right? Now your previous interventions, that came way too late in our planning, right? And so that's one thing that, I think that if we could go back in time, that squad would have started way, way, way earlier. And so I've got a bunch of discussions.
To be clear, work had started earlier. We hadn't had the hero squad on it.
Correct, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Good clarification. And so let me go through some of the stuff that we've been going through on freight elevators in general. So to start with, obstruction issues, right? And so a lot of the issues that we ran into were related to how the elevator actually detects obstructions and or contents. And so, for example, blocking the doorway, item being positioned on the roofs of the planetary freight elevators. Now, a lot of this, by the way, like I'm going to talk more about the planetary versions of it, which are 10 times worse for some reason. But in terms of instructions, like you could leave items on top of the elevator, and then it was detected as an obstruction, right? And so these obstructions, first of all, the checks were super rough. And so they would go, there's something, I'm not going to move, which is what a bit like, come on, you know?
So somebody would put a smoltz bottle on top of the freight elevator.
Correct.
And the whole damn thing would stop working.
Exactly. Well, yeah, exactly. That would brick the whole elevator until that was removed. But incidentally,
MedPen. Oh my God, it was MedPen so small.
Yeah. No. Yeah, but see, that's even worse because there's a problem with how the items are set up, right? And so when we create a prop or we create an item, there's a bunch of things that go into it. You know, physics proxy, weapon proxy, you know, all kinds of things that go on top of it. One of them is the bounds of the item, right? Which is not. There's multiple bounds in case you thought it was just a sphere or like a shape or a rectangle. There's more than one bounds, but long story short to say that a lot of items have incorrect bounds. And so what that does is that when you leave them on a flight elevator, they might clip into the elevator, right, itself. And so couple that with the bad obstruction checks, that could cause some really crazy exploits. Like, for example, leaving, I think, a med pen on the freight elevator, it would clip through the platform. You couldn't even see it. So you'd be like, there's nothing on it. And then it would still block it, right? I think that actually is not completely fixed. So we still have to, the squad still has to get to all of these items. And so for the bounds issue, what we're doing is we're adding a lot more checks on how the things are submitted again beforehand. So we're revisiting all bounds for items, right, and how their setup is made to make sure that none of them can be in that situation. So we're kind of doing a system-wide check on this in order to make sure that when we get into these situations, it's going to work the way we think it should. There's also this is all you'll see, it's all super interrelated, right? Items that would get destroyed but would no longer have geometry, but would still be considered obstructions. And so that was a very egregious one, I think, that we saw very early, which is there was a way for you to destroy an item. Its geometry would disappear, but it would leave the entity present. And so now that's it. That elevator is gone. Like, you need tools to see that entity, right?
I mean, at least with the med pen or something, people could zoom in and try to scan the pad, try to scan the thing, and try to find it. People in chat are already like, "Oh, great! You've just told everybody how to do it." It's like this. It's. We're also telling folks how to fix it. We're trying here. It's a delicate needle to thread here, but. That at least there was something people could do if they knew about it, which is why we're talking about it, to try to find it and remove it. This next one though, the geo's gone.
Yeah, that's it. This one was the worst one, right? And so the thing too with the freight elevator bugs related here, like some of them were set up of the actual freight elevator geometry, right? Actually, that was a regression. So it was a bug that got fixed and was reintroduced. Which is the shape, because we have multiple types of freight elevators, right? We have like the horizontal one. We've got ones that are vertical, some with doors, some without. And so there was some of those best setup. The planetary ones were especially egregious in that case. And so there's still some bounds check to be added, but this is all, when you got all these messages about, obstructions, then that was all related to this. One of the other issues we had with freight elevators was actually one of the first ones we had to fix, which is that the freight elevator is set up into two things. There's the kiosk and then there's the platform, right? And so the kiosk hosts the manager component. He's the one that's managing the stuff, right? And the platform is kind of slave to the manager. So there was an issue where, depending on how an area would stream in or stream out, the platform or kiosk would stream in first or stream out last, right? And this caused these two components to now be disconnected. So they would not find each other anymore. And so in those cases, that entire location was dead. Like that was it. That location, game over, right? Because they would never find each other. There was no model in place or process in place to go and try to fix that. And so this is, in part of what we do on the hero squads, we've done the same with the transit system, which is we introduce self-healing approach, right? And so in this case, the system would actually retry to connect. So if a manager doesn't have its connection to its platform, then it would get retried right over time until it actually connects. And so this way, even in the case where we do run into an issue where they disconnect, they could still reconnect. And so that solved the issue. That was actually rolled out in a hotfix.
Sino says, are elevators CIG kryptonite? Elevators are the kryptonite of every game development team in the world. Elevators and doors.
Yeah, doors and elevators,
man.
Doors and corners, man. Let's continue on our list of bugs with freight elevators, right? The UI and platforms could get out of sync. And so this is where the platform will have content. So there's clearly a box on the thing, and the UI is showing that it's empty, right? And so that prevents you from, basically makes the whole thing inoperable, because now you can't ship your box at all. And so in this case, I think that the reconnection, the streaming reconnection, actually solved this by self-healing, but also the UI will requery multiple times to be able to make sure it's always updated. This is a side effect of us of the game teams trying to cache a bit more data than they should, and so now it cached an empty elevator, and so that's a weird state. So a bit of background on how the platform actually works, right? So you've got your inventory system, right? Your warehouse, that's where your things are stored. The inventory system has that, right? So you can query for items in it. You get the list of what's in it. You can unstow items from it, which means bring them into the game world and physicalize them, or you can stow them into it. The freight elevator and the ship cargo platforms are actually using an abstraction on top of that called the inventory container. And so the inventory container can be open or closed, right? And so we had an issue so what that means is that when the inventory container of the platform is closed, that means that all of the items that are physically on it are actually stowed. It's opened, it means that all of the items that were in this inventory container are in the game world and being acted upon. So when you unstow things on your platform, that's what happens. There was a weird case where, in certain cases, if there was a delay in the back end, right? So the back end systems for all these operations have queues of operations that run, and so they can handle the delay, right? But in this specific case, there was a weird state where what's actually unstowed in the state of the container would be desynchronized. And so we've added another repair flow for this that would actually detect the state of it and actually resynchronize it in the cases where that would happen. This was because we didn't properly handle failures. And so in the case where an unstow would fail, the state would now be, in a weird situation. And so now we do the proper error handling, which is another thing that we've changed in our processes for development, is that error handling is now part of code reviews. So we really need to make sure every single, that sounds like basic, right? But I'm just saying the way it is, right? Some cases were not handled, and so you need to handle those failures.
You wanted open development.
Yeah, that's it. It's all warts and issues, right? And same thing for door states, right? So whether the door is open or closed, right? After stream in and out or server crash, right? Would sometimes clash. And so the kiosk can think the door is closed, but it actually is open. And so we do the same now. We can actually properly set the flow back properly. So one of the lessons we've learned with freight elevators in general, and all the issues I just went through, and the reason why we ran into them, is need way more multiplayer testing. I think that the major key behind it is that the teams have spent time on the in-hangar elevator, right? So we ran into some issues with in-hangar elevator for sure, and there's still issues there. But the big difference with the resource drive event was that we were driving players to the freight elevators, and there's more than one player interacting with it, right? And so that's one area where we have improved our testing and our testing approaches so that they're properly tested multiplayer, and not just as when we reach PTU or in focus test. Now it's like part of the general testing for these open areas.
You've mentioned something called self-healing.
Yeah.
Oh wow, what's self-healing?
Well, so self-healing is basically when we add functions to a system to detect that it's in a bad state and attempt to fix it, right? And so this is you could call it a kludge in some areas, right? Sometimes it's not the right thing, but I think that in this case, for a lot of the systems that we have, where we are working on a replacement, for example, and we're trying to keep this one running, self-healing will come in and basically rectify the situations, right? We have the way our game is made with our streaming system makes some trivial things in a normal game very complex. And sometimes we have run into these issues where the game teams can't really identify what's specifically causing an issue. They just know it happens, right? And so in the past, we used to wait for the key engineers that can actually decipher these conditions to come in. But these guys are obviously, everybody's swamped with work. And so sometimes the delay was so long that you guys as players would have to deal with the condition for long periods of time. And so self-healing is basically an approach where we're telling the game developers, well, while you're investigating the proper root cause for this, provide a self-healing alternative, right? Which keeps the system running properly. And they're at self-repair, basically.
There's an interesting, I don't know, maybe not, maybe interesting is not the right word. There is a forever thing that happens in chat. It's happened during the course of this show. It's happened in every YouTube comment and everything. So this idea that every developer can work on every single thing. That if this person is over here making a loading ramp for the Zeus, they could be better spending that time over here fixing network code and stuff. And like, why are you working on that when you should be working on this? And the answer is almost always because that's what that person does.
Right.
They can't do anything else. That's not what they're. It's like looking at a cook and asking them if they can fish. It's like, it's sort of kind of related. It's game dev, but it's not the same thing. Yeah. But even within the disciplines, that's a common thing. Even within the disciplines, even within engineers, there are still focuses and affinities and stuff. And there's still, even within a field of engineers, there are still many things where, and it's no slight against the person or whatnot. It's just this person has that specialty and that person has that specialty and that person has that specialty. And you often come up to a thing where it's like, well, we can't make any progress on this until we can get it in front of this person. And that person has already got this other thing in front of them and that other thing in front of them and stuff. So it's another way. It's another way I want to, I don't know what I want to say, what I'm trying to say here. I'm trying to illustrate that it's like anything, like priorities and like anything else. There are usually, if you're asking the question, why aren't they fixing this or why aren't they working on that? The answer is almost never. It's because we don't want to. It's correct. Because it's in line. It's in line. It's just that simple. It's in line.
Yeah, we do have a lot of hyper specialization too, right? And so you're right. Like even game programmers are not necessarily interchangeable for everything, right? That said, our approach, by the way, for our game teams is very multidiscipline, very fluid, right? Which does enable a lot of this, right? Like we have engineers who are able to go from one system to another in the game code, right? But when you have to do cross-discipline things, that's where now you need a concerted effort, and that's when it gets queued up.
Before we move off of freight elevators, what's the thing that's happening in like you go to Wicklow, you'll put all of your recipe stuff on the thing. It goes, okay, it takes it, it goes down, it completes the mission, and then doesn't give you your thing back up. And now you're just out those items because the mission completed, but it hasn't given you your reward, and people have just wasted their time on a Wicklow. What is that?
So I think that most of those issues are a lot of those are still being investigated actually right now, right? In order to really figure out what's happening. It is, these systems are intertwined, right? The reward system, for example, is part of the mission flow, right? Whereas the freight elevator is just the vessel, right, to deliver this. And so there's many reasons and timing why this could happen, right? And so I don't have a proper answer for this. I didn't dive on this one specifically, but I can tell you that I know the team is actively working on this one because it's a key. I mean, it's especially for Wicklow rewards. Like internally, Wicklow rewards is like the hey guys, like come on, let's get it priority on this one.
Chat's starting a campaign to send Wicklow to Kleischer.
That'd be a nice Christmas gift.
So at the beginning of Freight Elevators, we're gonna from Freight Elevators, we'll move on to our next thing because there is a kind of an obvious sounding solution to this when we're talking about putting med pens and small bottles on things, and then entities where the physicality has disappeared, but the entity is still there, and it seems like an obstruction. Cleanup, entity cleanup seems like it'd be the obvious thing. Just crank that dial up to 500 and clear that shit off of there every 2 minutes, and it seems like a good fix. Talk to me about entity cleanup. We're seeing ships left everywhere. We're seeing trash left everywhere. The Raptor's not here yet. What can you talk to us about entity cleanup?
Well, so one thing I think we touched on this a bit in January, right? That one of the things that we put into 4.0 was the beginning of some physics cleanup, right? Now, since then, right, since the beginning of the year, we've unified a lot of the cleanup systems, right? So, namely, we had an abandoned vehicle tracking system. We have the physics intersection cleanup system. We have the actual density manager, and so now all of this has been kind of unified into one platform. And so what we're able to do with this now is we have density classes. So depending on the type of item, we can define the density class, which basically allows us to say no more than X in a volume of Y for this kind of item, right? And obviously there's way more parameters. I'm just trying to keep it simple so we can understand what it does. We've recently added the ability for designers to basically change those density classes, basically vary these density classes by region. And so now they can say, in this location, make this super aggressive, make this less aggressive, right? And so the density manager part of this is really about just items in the game world that are dynamic that we want to make sure we keep at a manageable level, right? And so if you start putting water bottles in one place, at some point it'll start cleaning up because they're in the same volume, and the density class of the water bottle will inform how many we want to keep and how we want to do that. There's also lifetime cleanup. So things we want those to live, but we want them to disappear after a certain amount of time. So we've added that functionality in, so that's a lot better. And then vehicles come into play. So abandoned vehicles, we've been tuning this since the beginning of the year behind the scenes. This in the physics cleanup. So the abandoned vehicles is basically when you leave a vehicle completely abandoned. So no passengers, nobody's left on it. It's left on a planet. You leave it there. Already, it's put on a timer, right? And so at some point, we'll have to clean this up, right? If it gets interacted with, if passengers come into play on it, whatever, that revives it, resets the timer, right? I think if I remember right, that's set to something like 2 hours right now, something like this for abandoned vehicles, regardless of class for now. So that is something we want to add, which is basically change the density class for larger ships so that maybe they go faster. This is the kind of thing we need to keep tuning. And then so the abandoned vehicles will actually clean up those areas, right? Now, with the new system we have now coming in, we'll be able to override these values per region. And so for planet-side locations where we know there's going to be traffic, we can make that a lot more aggressive. And the last part of the cleanup system is the pink slip. I call it the pink slip, which is, hey, my ship turned pink and bam, it's gone, right? Which is basically when areas of the game where your ship is entering into a deep intersection with something else, right? And this is true of all areas, right? So if something enters deep intersection for a number of frames based on the size of the entities, size of the area, we will clean it up, right? We're going to first turn it pink, full pink, for a certain amount of time, and then poof, it disappears. The reason for that is because the servers are still very much physics bound. And there is no currently, I'm not saying it's impossible, but currently there is no elegant way to kind of break those collisions automatically and cleanly. It typically creates these maelstrom of physics problems when you try to fix it, and now you've backed it out into another physics element that is now colliding, and so you end up into these massive unstable systems. And so the pink slip is there for the moment, right? We're trying to improve this. We've been tuning these values quite a bit since the beginning of the year. Every patch we adjust the density classes, the abandoned vehicle timers, and the physics intersection costs a lot. I feel like we're seeing a lot less reports now. It's kind of getting a lot better. I think we're getting into the sweet spot, but it's unfortunately not a magic, just turn on density tracking, right? We already have density tracking. It's really about tuning the numbers so that it feels good, right? And that's the hardest part of this.
Folks in chat are talking about, just make it salvage gameplay. I want to preface that Benoit's not a game designer. And when so those are game design decisions, but yeah, I mean, an obvious kind of thing would be have an abandoned ship generate a salvage beacon, for ship to come and grab and clean up and stuff. But I think a big part of that is salvage needs a bit more attention too. We need to make those materials worth more, because it's not just enough to generate the missions. We would need to make the materials that you get from missions more valuable and mean more. And there are things coming around the corner. That's not true. There are things coming down the line. Let's just be down the line. Around the corner, that's not accurate. That's not remotely true. Then things come down the line, like crafting and whatnot. They're going to need lots of materials from lots of different places and stuff like that. So mining, salvage, lots of opportunities there to link it with other gameplay systems and make people want to go out and salvage things.
I mean, the amount of abandoned ship, for example, like let's say we did that right tomorrow morning. We're like, okay, abandoned ship detected, salvage beacon goes up. There would be an overwhelmingly amount of salvage beacons, because the amount of abandoned vehicles is extremely high, right? And so balancing those contracts after that becomes kind of impossible in this current setup. That's not to say we're not going to do that, right? But we need to put attention on salvage to be able to do that properly.
Yep. No, Jared's voice, Jared's mic isn't going out. I was just forgetting where I needed to put my mouth in order to use it. I'm a professional. Something. All right, so entity cleanup and freight elevators. Yeah. Another big bugaboo. This one's a relatively recent. Is not. It's been exasperated recently. We'll say that. Mm-hmm. Too many people. Too many NPCs. Spawn management. Whatever the heck you want to call it.
My personal pet peeve.
People go to an ASD or whatnot, and it's like they're trying to whittle the numbers down, and they get down to like 10, 12, or 12, 10, 6, and then it bump back up and stuff because things are respawning too quickly. What's going on? What can you tell us?
This is one of the ones that completely infuriates me, because it touches on many things. So spawning in the game is all over, right? There's multiple different types of spawners. Some of them are like item port spawners, for example. I hate using the bartender as an example, but apologies. But the bartender picks up a glass from an item port that's on the counter, and then we're at some point going to respawn a glass on this so we can do the animation again, or things like that, right? Same thing for like AA turrets. In 4.0, we've had many issues related to overspawning from those spawners, and we fixed a lot of them. Mainly conditions where designers would set those up as infinite spawn and no limits, which is great, right? So that's one thing. Now, since we've been putting out content this year, like the different locations all have like a population of AI NPCs, right, in the place. And so it's been we've had overspawn, I think, with every content patch this year. Yeah. Where every patch there's at least one report that comes up, is like, infinite NPCs at location. Is it meant to be this hard, right? And I was like, all right, what's the cause now? This is one of an example of like the symptom is the same. The cause has been different every time. This is something I really want to get time to solve properly. But the replacement system is in the works, but it's not close to being there. But so the way this works, like I'll give you the most recent one, for example. I think it was in 4.3.0, the mission module is the system that actually activates the NPC population for a mission in a given area, right? So when you enter the action area of a specific part of the mission, then the mission code is going to go and initialize submodules, and then one of those submodules will say, "Hey, put some AI in there," and then it's going to activate the spawn closets in the area, and that's going to start, right? The issue is there was a bug with the way the mission flow was working for these things that would cause these modules to doubly initialize in certain cases. And when that started, then it would actually do it again and again and again. And so that's the latest source of these overspawns. Um, the proper fix for this is the population manager. This is something that our R&D team have been working on, which is a replacement to all to both spawn closets are still going to be around, but the systems that drives the spawn closets to make these AIs appear and spawn on top of like the what's the word that they use for this? The base population in an area, like let's say you walk around New Babbage, all the social NPCs. Currently, all these social NPCs are placed there, right? And some of them, like again, the bartenders, are driven by mission modules or area modules, and those always get this overspawn. So we just need this replacement system at this point, like because we keep repeating this error from different angles, right? And so the population management system is his approach is different. He's gonna know what's in the game world. It's like, I need 5 guys. Do I have 5 guys? We're good, right? Like instead of going, when I start, I spawn 5 guys, which is a complete, problem. And so yeah, overspawning will be solved by this. In the meantime, we're putting in more verifications for the cases where when you stream out and you stream in and the module resets, or you abandon a mission or you start a mission during while you're already at the action area, that the actual logic doesn't run twice, and that there's actual limits in those areas.
Sorry, I've just been thinking about a cheeseburger and fries from Five Guys. You said it.
I just need those 5 guys.
All right. So obviously, that's a bit of a whack-a-mole thing until we get the new system online.
Yeah, one thing that I'm hopeful about though for this is that the teams have actually built some good additional debugging tools that allows us to kind of view the state of this. It sounds a bit weird, but it was difficult to even know how many NPCs are there at this location. That was actually a difficult information to find. So now we've got super good tools to be able to tell that. So that means if I'm able to just open the tool and view that information, it means that game designers can do the same. And so that means they can debug those problems in advance without us having to do it post-launch, which is the big thing.
No, chat, I don't have 5 guys money. All right. Freight elevators, entity cleanup, spawn management. When server meshing came online with 4.0, it brought with it all this new stuff and all these great things that we could do now. We got to be able to increase the server cap to 600. We got to improve that FPS performance on the server from 4.5 to 20 and stuff like this. It also had some knock-ons to some old systems, specifically interdiction and beacons. So we resolved most of the interdiction stuff in July, I feel like. But talk to me real quick about why that happened and what the solution was.
Little story behind this. So the if we go back to the 3.x days, right? Like the game server has everything, right? He's simulating everything. All the entities are on one server. And so there's I don't want to say shortcuts, because this was just the way you would build things at the time. Where, for example, doing interdiction was really like the server has all the entities. So he's able to do like cross zones check. He's able to raycast across zones. He's able to do all that stuff, right? Now with server meshing, you could be on a quantum path that brings you across game servers, right? And if you've ever looked at some of our backers have done outstanding tools to calculate interdiction positions and stuff like that. If you look at that, you'll see that the edges and the ends of this is where it actually matters, that you get positioned. And so that means that since we currently use the territory map around planets and moons, right, then typically that will interrupt the quantum jump of the interdiction that is the most effective or close to the most effective. And so what that needed is a solution that allows us to have a view of the interdiction system that's basically cross-server, right, for the game shard. And so the replication layer has that information, right? We do have it in the hybrid, but we are very reluctant at allowing what I'll call game code here with no, I'm not trying to be pejorative here. We don't want to let game code query the replication layer for multiple reasons, but we want to keep them isolated. And so for this, we needed to build a solution. So the team have actually built the online team built a new service that serves every shard, but is able to provide our game devs with basically a way to build a small representation, a small data representation of the game world for things that matter. So if you can picture this, you're in your ship, you start your quantum drive. What actually happens is now the game server is going to register in this new service called the Entity Cluster Service some piece of data that says we have a quantum drive at this location, right? And he's going to keep that updated, right? And on the other hand, I've got someone who starts a QED device, quantum interdiction device, QID device, QED, whatever, the interdiction device, starts your interdiction device that will also connect to this and then inform this kind of matrix view of the quantum interdiction network. That's doesn't matter which server you're on. This is all kept updated in semi-real time as you're quantuming and moving, and as the interdiction devices are activated or deactivated. And so what that allows the game server to do now is he's receiving these updates. He's got this, let's call it symbolic view of the game world to do it. And so now he's able to do proper raycasting math to see if the interdiction is going to hit across server. Doesn't matter if you're, on the same server or not, you can actually trigger the interdiction across. And then that basically gives us this ability to have cross-server coordination for things without having to push all this to the replication layer or query it from it. So this is mostly a gameplay system, but we can use it. We are using it for beacons. So we're going to be using it even more for the full beacon implementation, but it's going to be the same kind of thing where now you could be in New Babbage and someone has a beacon open in Pyro, and if the gameplay wants to allow it, you might be able to get that beacon or see that beacon or bind to it,
right? And beacons. I mean, this is right now. Right now we've got the Apollo, which is going to PTU like right now. If it isn't already, it's.
Yeah, is it? I haven't checked out.
Yeah, exactly. We've been doing this for a while. I'm not looking at the chats, but whenever tonight's PTU goes, the Apollo will be in for PTU folks who already own it, and that's why you saw the injections of the modules that were given to everybody at no charge. Who owned the Apollo. So you'll be able to test that this weekend before we attempt to go to live later. Where was I going with this? But beacons. Medical beacons, but beacons, and specifically medical beacons here have had lots of compounded trouble since server meshing came on. First it was the notification. They used to get this. There used to be this big toast notification in the center, and I'm going to remember this wrong, if somebody in the chat's going to be like, that's not how it happened, Disco. I'm like, I'm trying. There's a big toast notification that used to happen in the middle, and then when we bumped the server notification, which was great for people who wanted to play first responders, because they could go and they could do stuff, and then they had this nice big notification that somebody needed a medical beacon, and they could stop what they were doing and then go and run off to the rescue, and that was great. When we bumped the player caps up to 600, that became absolutely interminable. Boom, 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 boom. And we just had to shut that down. It was like, okay, we can't have that. And so they lost that functionality to save everybody else, and that sucked. But then there was the issue with the second solar system. The beacon, if the beacon originated in Pyro and you were in Stanton or vice versa, you didn't get the waypoint. You didn't get the marker because the marker existed in another star system that wasn't loaded in to where you were. So it just looked like, hey, I'm trying to pick up this rescue beacon, and it looked like nothing was happening because it couldn't give you the marker. There was no intermediate marker. And then there's some problem that started last month that meant we had to disable the entire thing while they worked to fix that. This system's had a lot of problems, and while not all of them are going to be fixed in time for this stuff, talk to me about the scope of the issue and what we need to do to make it better.
Well, so out of all of this, all the stuff you mentioned now, I know that our intent is to reactivate medical beacons, absolutely, right? I think that's a core part of the game we're trying to do, and so we really want those reactivated. The entity cluster service I just told you about is what can enable us to do cross-star system beacons. I don't think we're there yet, but we definitely want to get there, right? Where we could actually pick those up. So right now, all of the kind of technology pieces that you need to fix all the issues you mentioned about beacons are there, right? We have the ability to have controlled notifications, localized detection of beacons, cross server, cross star system notifications, whatever. It's really about, can we put a team on it to basically add all these things? But at least all of the hurdles are kind of solved with the interdiction work we did and this new service, the cluster service, is the thing that we need to be able to do that, to reactivate all that. So that's already live. So it's a good thing.
And the bug that prevents people from being able to quantum to the beacon?
Well, that definitely needs to be fixed. I think that even for this release, we're aiming for that to be solved, because the beacons have to work even if you don't get cross-star system beacons just yet, and that it's not fully integrated with the cluster service. I think localized beacons should still be functional. You should be able to quantum to them, and you should receive them properly. And yeah.
I got a soft spot for first responder gameplay. Like everything else you do in the verse is in some way, shape, or form self-serving, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with going out and making your fortune, being a pirate or being a miner or a salvager or a racer. Although if you could make your fortune on being a racer, good for you. I don't know how much the Daymar Rally pays out, but it's like first responders, the people who choose to play as medics and stuff. They're choosing a loop that's just there to help other people, and I think that's cool. And I don't think we've done a super great job in the past of really supporting that as much as we should. So that's not I don't have the power to do anything about that. I just wanted to say that I recognize that, and we can do better.
Yeah.
Let's go to a big one. Let's go to a big one. Where I'm trying to do start with big ones. Freight elevators, blah blah, and energy cleanups, and little guys like interdiction, beacon. Transit system.
I don't hear you. Just something on the line.
Shitty transit system. I'm in the third hour. I'm in the third hour. That's my one for the hour. What are we doing?
Transit. So, we do have a hero squad on this, right? And so for everybody's sake, just to make sure we're all on the same page, the transit system is the system that drives elevators, not freight elevators, trains, and some areas base transit for these things. So the transit system has been the bane of our existence. I can't frame it to something other. And so at the beginning of the year, we put some significant resources in that hero squad and brought in some very, very experienced developers to the team to help push these fixes along. On top of what I discussed earlier about the methodology that changed for these issues, and the introduction of self-healing techniques, right, to try to get it moving. And so we are accepting the current state of transit, right? I feel that right now we no longer lose carriages, or when we do, it gets auto-fixed, right? The destinations mostly work. Double doors rarely happen. The system mostly responds well. There's still issues with I'm still seeing in my playthroughs the train timers of insane values, which is a bit of a drag. Or the transit still has this unfortunate propension of, in the event of a server crash and you are in movement on the train, your client will keep interpolating that.
We still
which might get you to space, right?
We still get the occasional missing elevator and whatnot. There's still a few trains that trap people.
Yes,
Yeah.
that can still happen, right? But right now, the state at which this system is, the approach of that system is, we're kind of accepting its state, right? We're still tracking the big egregious issues that we have, like the ones that we just mentioned. So those are still being tracked and worked on. But overall, from a leadership standpoint, we're kind of in a space where now we want to talk about transport, right?
Yes, I've been waiting. Like you've been sitting here, like, oh, we're gonna accept it. We're gonna accept it. I'm like, give them the drop, Benoit. Don't just be like, well, yeah, we're gonna accept it. We're just fine. No, I think it's fine. We think it's gonna be. We don't think it's fine. It's just we got self healing in, and it can carry us until the new thing comes in, and that's transport system.
Correct.
Go.
So transport is a complete rewrite of transit, right? Which has a much different approach to how it manages peripherals, things you click on to call up things, gateways, which are the areas at which the carriages stop, and carriages, of course. And so the transport system is a lot more resilient in its approach to streaming problems, which has been a thing in the past, right, for the transit. It's also the way it's developed is a lot more robust. And so the state of transport, let's talk about that. So the team of currently have, the approach that we've taken for it is the system is kind of built at this point, and we have a single transport link that we use internally. So not yet on a player-facing build, but we have an internal build of this where new Babbage habs are completely driven by the transport system, which is pretty big milestone for the team, because it means like the system is basically kind of fully featured in terms of it's able to drive one of the major habs drop. We are currently working at instancing those transit links. So just to reiterate what I said a little bit back in January, the introduction of instance hangars, which means dynamic gateways in the transit system, is really what like made it a big issue, right? And so now the team are working at adding that functionality into transport to make sure that we support properly dynamic gateways, which will allow you to have a transport link to and out of an instance. Now, this could be an instance hangar, but in the future it might be an area, location that has some stuff in it, right? And so that's the state of transport right now, is we're working on the instance transit link and trains. So we've done elevators, and now we're putting trains in with the full feature, which the trains have an additional peripheral, which is the timer, the added timer on top of it.
This is one of those things where we talked about it. In the finished product, it shouldn't look any different than what they've got. It should just work. There should just be a time where it's like, oh, look, all these things work and they've stopped killing you. Underneath, it's an entirely new system that was built after the implementation of server meshing, which is really the big thing. It's the old system was built long before server meshing. I know we reached out to the original developer who built it. Like he's not with the project. We're like, hey, you want to help us? You want to help us reconfigure it for the server meshing world? And there's like, no, you just need to build a new thing and whatnot. So you put together your team. We're building the new system. I don't understand why it's not called Star Transport though. Don't understand why it's not called Star Transport, but we're building the new
Starport.
Why aren't we calling it the Starport system?
Hey, we could.
We're going to call it the Starport system. We're going to call it the Starport system now. Here's what's going to happen. Anytime you try to talk about it publicly, I'm just going to call it the Starport system now, and it really doesn't matter what you call it internally.
Why do we do these shows?
But but yeah, that's like I said, you've already got the first version. It's already working internally in New Babbage. We're adapting it for instancing, and there's some high hopes that we'll be able to get that in at some point in 2026.
So we are absolutely tech previewing that system in place where our goal is going to be to basically, we want to try to do one full location with it.
Yep.
So that all that entire location, elevators, trains, all that stuff is completely Starport driven.
Yep.
And then tech preview that and make sure that, the same methodology and QA checks that we've added for transit are going to have to fully pass before we actually accept to bring it in.
So tech preview for Vulcan and all these graphics things and the mission system, tech preview for engineering, and then tech preview for just use the elevator, please.
Yeah.
Just use the elevator, please.
Pretty much. Exactly.
Okay. You said You said the transit system was your most despised system. I challenge you, sir, with the ATC.
Oh, man. Well, that's one of the casualties of this, right? So I hate ATC like a passion. Its functionality is really cool, but it's one of those systems, a bit like transit.
Wait, it has functionality?
Well, yeah, it does. So on ATC, we haven't done a lot of work on it, mostly focused on metrics. And so ATC, right, is a system that you call when you want landing or when you want to leave, right? It is unfortunately responsible for hangar queues, and is also responsible to assign you a landing area and coordinate your instancing hangar. So basically create the instance manager for your hangar that creates the hangar, and then manage the pad on your hangar. And so for ATC, while we're completely not happy with its stability overall or the queue times, which is the one thing that we're actually looking at the moment, is to make sure that the system works the way we want it. That's why we've put all these metrics in about at this location, the time to exit is this, at this location is this. Do we have enough gateway? Does the system perform the way it should? So we're still in an info gathering phase here to have the proper plan. But we do know one thing is that we are going to change the way the interaction between ATC and hangars actually work. Currently, ATC manages everything. Like I said, it gives you your landing area. It says, hey, I need an instance at this gateway. Path spawns your hangar, instance created, all that stuff. Adds that instance tag to your player, then the doors open. Now you can get into your hangar, but now ATC sees the pad in your hangar as his landing area. He's managing this, right? And so he's taking care of all that stuff, which is a bit problematic because it's an old system. We know of its flaws. And so we do want to split these responsibilities so that there's a hangar manager.
Yeah.
So that the moment that you're done going through those doors, that's it. Done. ATC's out of the picture. Now you're completely in your hangar, and the hangar manager takes care of this. And so that we've been doing tech design on this, but unfortunately, because of the different focuses we have this year, this is one casualty that I was not able to push forward on.
Yeah, there's some of these stations that have like 10, 15, 20 doors, but you'd swear the ATC only ever uses one or two of them.
Yeah, that's the one thing that we want to solve, even with the old system, before we even start hangar management.
Now, when you do the new system, ATC, air traffic controller, Star traffic controller, you call it Star TC. Star TC to go with Starport. Somebody suggested
or maybe Starport does ATC too.
Star traffic controller, yeah. There you go. You're with me. The Star Troller. All right. How you feeling, Benoit?
I'm good. I'm good.
All right. So we've gone through our year of playability. We've gone through our little bug smashers aside. We've gone through our what's this
freight elevators.
No, not before freight elevators. We did server meshing. Yep. Why isn't it called star meshing? We went through star meshing. We've gone through our list of big ticket items. It's like this. We've been doing this for about 2:15 now. I want to go from big ticket items to
bigger ticket items.
The biggest. I want to go to this is if I'm allowed. Hold on. If I'm allowed to I'm gonna put my CIG hat on.
Go for it.
There you go. And take my CIG hat off. If I'm allowed to have an opinion that's just mine and mine alone.
Always.
The most egregious thing from my perspective, the thing that is, after dealing with getting the server frame rates up and getting the stability scores up and killing 30K, which is amazing, and I'm going to shout you that thing. I'm going to shout you out till the cows come home on that one. That thing plagued us for so long. Work on transit to transport. Work on the freight elevators is still ongoing. All that stuff, great. To me, the most demoralizing, the most when your stuff disappears. It's just that simple. You spend hours in there. You work your butt off. There are people who get together with members of their org to work towards earning a Polaris from Wicklow. And if they manage to put all their stuff on the elevator and the elevator doesn't eat it, they then get their Polaris. They then get their Atlas, ICTY. They then get their F8C, whatnot, and they have it. And then we release a patch, which we used to do every 3 or 4 months, and now we've been doing every month. So as an unfortunate side effect of our change in our philosophy, we exasperated this problem, and now it's a gamble. It's a crapshoot. Every time we release a patch, it's just who gets to keep it, who gets to lose it. Bing, 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 bing. What the heck is happening? What is happening, and what the hell are we doing about it?
All right, cool. LTP, right, is the famous system
the worst
we're talking about.
named thing in the world. No, sorry. Go ahead. Continue.
Well, let's go a bit into what LTP actually does, right? Because there's some misconception around it, and also a bit of misconception to the amount of effort actually put on it. But so historically, if we go back to the 3.x era, I guess, I think it's in the 3.x era.
Yeah.
We developed the first LTP system, right? Which came a bit as a side request, right? We patched 4 times a year. It was a bit like, oh, there's some stuff players want to be able to persist, cross patch. We're still in development, so it's okay. We're wiping all the time, and we want to wipe because blah blah blah. There's other considerations, so let's build something. So we built a very small system initially to persist stuff, and the way that worked is that the game server would basically submit these commands to say, this guy picked up a gun, this guy dropped a gun, this guy has this. And so that was a solution that kind of worked at the scale of a single server kind of system. And we had a lot less items at the time. That solution was in no way scalable, right? But it kind of did work better overall than the current one, to be honest. Now come PES 3.18, come 4.0 dynamic server meshing. Now we persist everything else, right? So we need to kind of change how we deal with long-term persistence. And so let me describe a bit how this works currently. So when you acquire a ship from, let's say, the web platform, right? That ownership record lives on the web platform. It's in there, right? And every time you log into the game, we check, oh, this guy has this thing. Does he have that ship in the game? In his entitlements, right?
It's called an entitlement. That's an important term.
That's your entitlements, right?
That's your entitlement.
So the entitlement records, I know people are going to make the joke of, oh yeah, we're all entitled. Yeah. So the entitlement
I wasn't going to make that joke. I respect these people.
I'm preempting you. So we make sure you have an entitlement record. When you actually open up your ASOP terminal, right, and you view your list of ships, what you're actually viewing is your list of entitlements, right? These are not your ships. These are actually your entitlement records. Attached to your entitlement records is the insurance document that goes with it, which describe the loadout of the ship. We call this an entity class loadout, which describes what is in each port, right? And if there's no entity class loadout or insurance document with it, then it's the default loadout. So that is your entitlement records. That's what you see in ASOP. Then we also query for, is there an entity for this entitlement record at the moment, right? And that will look at the game database in this current moment. Let's call it the inventory database for now, right? So we cross-link the two. So for each row in your ASOP terminal, you'll see your entitlement record. You'll see the state of the entitlement record will allow you to see if you need to deliver it first. That means I have no entity in the game. So when you deliver it, now we create the entity in the game. And then if it's stowed in an inventory, then you can retrieve it, right? It starts from the entitlement record. And then if the ship is stowed, then you'll see its location is set, right? If it's left in space at a location, you'll see its location is set. If it's lost or destroyed, or I think there's a couple of different states, but one of them is destroyed, then you can claim the ship, right? And then that will use the insurance document to destroy whatever matches this entitlement. So we have a way to find entities that were created from a given entitlement, gets destroyed, and then we use the insurance document to give you a brand new ship, right, at the location where you're at. And so that's in game. That's what you have in game. That's the way the in-game part works, right? So let's do a clear example. I'm in New Babbage. I have a hawk in my list, and I deliver it. It gets created at that location. I retrieve it. It gets unstowed onto the pad. I use it around, blah, blah, blah. I fly out to another place. I lose the ship. I respawn in Pletcher. I could do my time. Then I go out to Grimex or whatever I respawn at. And now I'm in a different location. I see the hawk in my entitlement list, but the ship is nowhere to be found. I claim it. A new ship is created. It's put in there.
Yep.
Okay.
So before we go to the ones you get in game, which is just to reiterate this so everybody understands this before we move on to the next thing. Because people are always wondering, why do I always get the stuff I pay money for? Real money for, but the stuff that I earn in games is different. That's what we're in the process of explaining right now.
Yes.
The stuff that you get that you pay actual money for, or that you get awarded through like a subscription or a gift, like we gave the armor to Concierge a couple months ago and stuff like this. Those sit on the web platform. That every time you log into the game goes, hey, what am I entitled to? The platform says, these are the things you're entitled to, and it gives you back. It's why, remember the character reset back in the day and whatnot? That's all it did. It just refreshed those entitlements, and that's why you got those things back. That system is not simple. Benoit what Benoit described there was not simple in the least, but it's a pretty hefty system. It works. We know it works. It's why you are never in any risk of losing the things that you pledged for, and it's why sometimes certain items like the Race for Stanton stuff, trigger a thing that gives you a web platform entitlement, and those go into your My Hangar, and you see them in your My Hangar, and that's why you get those, and you have that. That stuff is, for the most part, it's very stable. It's very stable. You can always rely on getting that stuff back. That's not how the in-game stuff works.
Correct.
Benoit.
So we went through the web platform stuff and how ASOP works, right? Let's go into, now I go to New Deal and I buy a ship with UEC, right? That will actually give you an entitlement, right? Because you can claim those ships, right? You can transfer those ships. So now, at that point, up to now, these will work identically, right? But when you log into the game, we don't reconcile from an outside source your list of purchased in-game ships. They are just entitlements in your account, right? And that's it. We keep them. Okay. Let's stay on ships for now, right? Before we get the items.
Let's stick with ships.
Now, the thing that's important to know here is that the actual ship you're playing with, the amount of possible states for that ship are almost infinite, right? You could leave the ship in space. You could leave it in your friend's hangar. For some reason, people are able to do that. You can stow it in inventory. It can be inside an Idris that's stowed in someone else's thing. All kinds of stuff can happen. And so there's multiple paths to update that specific state of that ship. Whereas your entitlement, once you have it, you have it. That's why your ASOP terminal always has it. Now, let's talk about how LTP works now. Now, this is within a game patch. When we release a new patch, inventory database, entitlement database, they're gone, right? We start from scratch. And now we're rebuilt. So you reconnect, you come in, your web purchases are being reconciled. We create new entitlements for them. And then when you get in game, you create new ships, and then you play with those ships and everything works. What is LTP? LTP is when you acquire things in game and you have ships that you own, right? The way LTP was designed, and maybe this is the part that, there's a mistake there, right? But still, I'll explain how it works. When you stow something in an inventory that you own, the systems will create what we call LTP records. These LTP records basically say they're close to what an entitlement is, right? But they say Jared owns a hawk, right? And those are stored in another database, right? That is outside the game environment and lives cross patches, right? And so now when we wipe the entitlement database and we wipe the game database and we start fresh from a new patch, when we reconcile your account the first time, we're going to give you your web purchaser for sure, and we're going to give you back your LTP records. And so that will create those entitlements. That's the intent. Now, the problem is, right? We need to make sure that we always stow the stuff back into inventories that we own properly, and that those records actually save properly, right? And it turns out that there's a million goddamn ways in which stuff gets stowed in this game. And so, for example, claiming a ship by insurance, then you get the ship, it gets stowed from another path. And in that path, the LTP wasn't correct. We've had cases where we tried to fix bugs related to the F7C turrets, for example, that got disconnected, that were a default loadout item that we didn't want to wipe when you claimed insurance on it. And that messed up the LTP records for it. And so this whole thing basically is very fragile. And so what we realize now is that the list of LTP records and the way we update them is not always a slam dunk. In fact, there are a bunch of cases where the record's not updated right. But we even had a case in 4.2.0 very recently where we realized 2 days after launching the patch that the way the recording was going for the ships, there was an issue where instead of giving you, I'm going to take your Wicklow Polaris as my example, just to make it super egregious. Your Wicklow Polaris that you stowed in your inventory by going at your hangar and storing it back in would actually persist as one of its components in LTP. So you would get like a cooler instead of the ship, like you'd get. And so that was obviously a very big issue. And we ran corrective programs to solve that. And so that's why, if you notice in 4.2.1, you didn't have much reports of people losing ships in 4.2.1. But now we're back at 4.3.0 and we've had reports of lost ships between patches. And so we're pretty certain at this point that we know that there's still cases where the LTP records are incorrect, either through certain game flows. There's also, unfortunately, a lot of signal to noise ratio issues, like people claiming they've lost ships. We investigate their accounts; they never had those ships. Yeah. We get a lot of that, right? And so at this point, we have to be very prudent. Yeah. But
I want to jump in here to make sure that this doesn't get lost in some of the stuff I'm checking. So there's two issues. We need to step back and explain how the checkout and the stow works, because that's causing some confusion. We'll do that in a second. But this bug where first bug is things aren't getting stowed right. And so and so when it comes time to entitle at the beginning of a new patch cycle, you don't get the thing. Sometimes it's not getting stowed at all. Sometimes it's getting stowed and being logged as a component part or something else, and that's why it's like, oh, I'm supposed to have a ship. I don't have my ship, but I have this cooler instead. That I don't think I own this cooler and whatnot. We were on a call, you and I, until it was like 4:00 in the morning. My time, when we were investigating this and just giving you examples, and we were trying to figure out what's going. The man was literally inside the raw LTP database. We were checking individual items, like talking to backers on Twitter and Discord, and like, okay, when did you do this and what did you do this? Like working down at the most granular level in the middle of the night, trying to figure this out back, and I can't even remember what patch it was, to figure out that they were being stored as other items.
Yeah.
And so that you can write the SKU to fix that stuff. But all of this happens because of something that we haven't explained before, and that's the checkout and stow system. So talk to me about, and talk to me, be candid, it's okay, about how the checkout and stow on this LTP system works. And I'm gonna preface this with something. We've admitted to a lot of peculiarities in the course of this show. Now we're about 2.5 hours in. We've been very candid. We've been very forthright. We've admitted to Benoit said the words, "Can't trust Dev with this," or whatnot. It's like this. A lot of things are being said in jest and whatnot. What I can't control what you take away from this conversation that we've had. My hope would be a recognition that we're human and that we're constantly trying and growing and striving to do better. If you choose to take other stuff from that, I can't do much to help that. But explain the checkout and stow system, because that's what's going to light the bulb for a whole lot of people of what the struggle is here.
So you have the inventory system, right? Where that stuff goes and gets stored in there, and the records for these, let's say you have a ship that you store you're at your hangar, there's a ship on the pad. That ship is unstowed. It actually lives in the game shard database and is actively being simulated on, meaning we're getting updates from the game server on this ship, its position, its location, the state of doors, thrusters, all that stuff, right? It's, multiple messages per second, right, on these things. So it's unstowed. Now you press the store button on your ASOP, right? Platform goes down, doors close. Now the system will stow that ship. What that means is it deletes the ship from the shard, removes it from the game world, and then moves it to the inventory system. So it gets stored into your inventory location, your location inventory, right? Gets stored in there. At that point, if you own the inventory where the ship is getting stored, we create an LTP record for it. Meaning that if we wipe the patch right at this second, and you come back in the new patch, we will give you back that ship for sure, right? Now, through the hangar, 100%, right? But there's other areas where we create ships when they're already stored, right? There are areas where we do repair and we modify stuff like that. Those are the areas where now the LTP record might not get created, or we might interpret it as a separate thing. The other thing is when we stow things into an inventory that you own, it's not just a ship, right? This is the bit that sometimes people oversimplify. It's the tree of the ship, right? So if the ship has a box container that has 32 SCU of boxes that have handguns in them, I'm going to give you the ship plus the handguns. Anything in that tree that is flagged for the long-term processing. So this is where designers look at items in the game and they say, this we want to store cross-patch, right? There are things we do not want to store cross-patch. Ammo, consumables, stuff like this. We don't want to store this cross-patch, right? That's a design decision that we've taken in the past. And so there's this whitelist that comes into play that decides what items will create LTP records for and when those get processed. And so the process of taking something that you're storing and then creating LTP records from it is really about processing the whole tree. So when you store an address, we might be creating hundreds of LTP records for stuff that's in it, right? And so that gets to be an issue. Also, like if you have you can start thinking about the edge cases now, right? You have a constellation. I don't even know if it fits actually. Let me take a smaller ship. You have a Gladius in the bay of an Idris, and you store the Idris in your inventory. Technically, you might get the LTP record for the Gladius in this case, right? Now, it depends on ownership and how that's actually trickling. And so these are all the cases we have to deal with this. And so when we told players in the past, oh, you need to store your stuff, right? What does that mean, right? I'll give you a concrete example of where there would be a lost ship, right? Based on these parameters. Let's say there's no defect on the system, which we're not completely sure yet. I'm pretty certain there is a defect, but let's start with there's no defect. You play the game with your Gladius and you leave it in space somewhere, and now you respawn at your station, and your ASOP says Gladius destroyed, right, or whatever, and now you have the claim button, right, and you're like, oh, cool, yeah, I'll do that later, and you leave the game, and then we patch. You don't have that ship because when you unstowed the ship to the game shard to play with it, we removed the LTP record for it. Right? That's the way the system is designed. Now, we're going to change that because that's, there's too many paths in which stuff gets stowed that could lead to problems or that don't respect the rules properly. And that's what we've come to realize. And so without going into too much details about how we do this, right? But this is a bit part of our item imprint epic, right? So very large approach there, because we always said item recovery tier 0 is just tier 0, so there's more item input work there. But part of this is a revamp of how we deal with long-term persistence. And we're going to take a very, I'm going to say, simple approach to this. We're going to persist your entitlements across patches. And so instead of trying to always reconcile all the data from the game state, which I just gave a couple of examples, but I could go on, right, of examples where, the turducken example of like stuff and stuff and stuff and stuff, right? That, and all these things can cause either the records to go to the wrong place or the wrong things being persisted. So instead of that, we're going to persist your entitlements. So that means that if you see a ship in your ASOP terminal, you're going to come back to the next patch. You're guaranteed to have the same list. There's no ifs, and or buts, because we're keeping that database cross-patch completely. And now the other questions people I've seen some comments. People are like, "Why don't you just persist the whole thing across patches?" Right? We cannot do that for reasons related to the data format. So let's say between 4.2 and 4.3, the Gladius to play with is not the same Gladius between patches. It's completely changed. Its shape has changed. Its entity hierarchy has changed. The parameters on them have changed. The components that drive it have changed. And so we don't yet have the tools or the proper approach to version every single part of the game properly so that we could forward migrate the data, right? So that the Gladius that you've stored in 4.2, it's all tree, its parameters, its snapshots, its variables, all that. So you come back in 4.3 and we're like, we migrated to the next one. That's something we want to do, but we're completely not there yet. And so we need this LTP layer. So your entitlement records actually serves that purpose right now, because when you claim a ship from insurance, we will basically do the same exact thing, which is we persist the fact that you own this ship, and we allow you to obtain a recent version of that ship on the current patch. It'll be exactly the same mechanic.
So let me attempt to do Chris hands here and say it another way so that between your way and my way, people will have
Sure.
an understanding. And you tell me if I ever mess up in this stuff. So you buy something on the website, it gets stored in a website version of this database where all these things are done. You log into the game. When you log into the game, it says, "Hey, I need my entitlements. What are the things that this person owns from this other thing?" It queries this other database that's on the platform, on the web, whatever, gets a list of things, pulls down, and that's why you have it. That system works. It's great. It's pretty robust. It's people don't have any trouble getting the stuff that they buy. That's why that's always there. That's great. Whew. All right. Everything else you buy in the game is super insanely plentiful, from giant spaceships made of all these components down to individual bullets and everything. And it's all physicalized and whatever. Maintaining all of that for every single player, every single version that gets left over and stuff is simply not possible. It's simply too big a thing. So we have to decide what to save and what not to save. LTP is this as a separate database, not the entitlement database over here, a separate database of the things that you have purchased, found, earned in game that gets locked to that. We make choices on what that is. Bullets, no. Med pens, no. A spaceship, yes. Armor, yes. So, and there are lots of areas in between, but we'll go with the extremes here. Med pens and spaceships. We'll use spaceships. We'll keep with spaceships as the example because it's the easiest way to explain this. So you've bought the spaceship, you've earned the spaceship, whatever. You land it in a hangar, you stow it, boom, it creates an LTP record. Doesn't create that LTP record until you've got it home, you stowed it, and boom, you've got it. The next time you try to fly it, you pull it up from the hangar. That coming up from the hangar elevator is more than just a nice visual. It is a representation of what's happening to your LTP record. It is pulling that out of LTP and moving it into the live server game database, the universe of the world, so that you can fly it around. It needs to do this in order to work for things like piracy and theft and prevent item duplication. It has to come out of there to go here. So that's how we prevent duplication. This is all in a perfectly working scenario. There are plenty of bugs that creep in here. People are like, wait, I didn't stow this and I came back to two versions of the ship. Those are bugs. We're talking about how it was designed to work. You take it out, you're flying, it's no longer in LTP, you're flying around. It's out there until you bring it back to a hangar, stow it, make it go down. And at which point it recreates the LTP record, puts it back in. If your ship is destroyed while you're out flying it, it doesn't create your new LTP record until you hit the claim button. You hit the claim button, and then it cleans that up, puts it into the LTP record. So that's not something we've ever been super great at communicating to people, and why sometimes it's like, well, why have I lost the ship? Why have I not lost the ship? We're explaining these things to help you better fight that fire until these new changes come in. That system has lots of bugs, lots of flaws, lots of issues here and there. If you took anything from Benoit's conversation, his attitude, his demeanor, we fully recognize the limitations of it. Like many things in Star Citizen, it was a product of its time, and it needs to be revised and helped and bolstered as the game continues to grow and get more complex. Those are things you can do to help assuage that. Obviously, everybody knows the thing about landing and getting it back to the hangar. Don't forget to claim your things in the ASOP. It's not going to fix everything. There's still all the outlying bugs and issues and stuff, but it's another thing that you can do to help yourself in the meantime. That said, we have a new solution that we're going to put into effect, and I'm not going to say anything when I throw it back to Benoit, he can say what he wants to say about when. When you earn a ship, when you buy a ship and whatnot, it's yours. You've gone through the mission reward or the Wicklow thing or the buying. Not when you steal it from somebody else, but when you do one of the legitimate ways. We are going to create an entitlement record, not an LTP record, an entitlement record up in another database that's just like the one that we use for when you buy things. Yep. And then from that point on, now that we've created that record over there in that database, not inside LTP, that means that no matter what happens, the next time you log in, you're going to have access to your ship. The next time we do a patch, you're going to have access to your ship with the same stability and the same reliability as the system we use to sell things. And so like that. So that is what they're working on right now. So we don't have to wait for the changes to LTP in order to resolve this terrible issue of people losing the ships that they've bought with in-game money or earned through Wicklow rewards and stuff like that. How'd I do, Benoit?
That was actually pretty good. I mean, a couple of things I'd correct, but not even worth it. I think that's totally fine.
All right. You want to tell anybody about when we might?
Well, we're actively working on this right now. So the big parts of the online team are dedicated to this. There's a few things that we need to solve in order to put this into full production, release it. Obviously, since those are backend systems, they have to be super robust and very well tested because you know what happens when they're not. But that's the approach. In the meantime, though, we're discussing mitigating options, right? So I'm not going to promise those here, but we did do a mitigation in 4.2.1 that actually kind of worked for ships, specifically ships, not all items, but for ships. And so we might actually use that again to ease up on some of the pressure before all the systems come in, because the reality is your entitlements is what you're actually driving at from the ASOP terminal. And so we can just ensure that you have all those entitlements again, right? And so that's the mitigation. And so we're probably going to be putting that into play just so that in the meantime, while we're developing the feature, there's not as much, ship loss and things like that.
Somebody in the chat was like, Jared, star-splaining again. Star-splaining again. Yeah. It's my grandfather used to serve on the USS Tingy, and his job, he served on it during World War II in Korea, and his job was to be the person that sat next to the captain, and when the captain gave the order to repeat the order in the radio and whatnot, so that you heard the same thing from two different voices in two different ways, so that you understood, so that it reduced the amount of misunderstanding and what happens inevitably, because I guess we've been doing this for a while. Drink, everybody. Is you let one person say it and you only have one person say it, and half the people get it, and that's great, and half the people don't get it because it's not delivered quite the way. So we've found over the years, much to the annoyance to some people who call it star-splaining, that when you say it two different ways, it helps both halves of the people in the community understand. There's usually somebody that that gets it from one way and somebody that gets it from the other way. And we like to do both because that's our job here. So you can call it star splaining if you want, but
I think you did a pretty good job, to be honest.
What else we got left, Benoit? We that was pretty much all of our big ticket things.
I think so.
I know, folks. Before we let you go, I mean, we got 10 minutes left before we hit 3 hours. Let's go ahead and try. Recently, there was some press and stuff like that. Turbulent, or some part of Turbulent is becoming what is it called? Cloud Imperium Games Montreal stuff. How's that going?
Very good, actually. I mean, we're coming up on the 2-year anniversary of the merger, right? Of Turbulent and CIG, and then I mean, it's going really well. I think overall so we did want to do some adjustments though, because like the Turbulent teams, even though they're fully working on Star Citizen, we're still under the Turbulent name, right? Which caused us a bunch of grief, to be honest, in like having to explain, when we're hiring people and we're bringing into the team, it's like, so what is there? Oh, it's Star Citizen, but it's Turbulent, but really we're the same. Like, it's okay. Like that doesn't help, right? So we all wanted to make sure that this was kind of one good unified message, and so for the game teams over there. Basically, we kind of split the two businesses because Turbulent still exists as a web company, right? And the web teams are fully inside CIG now. And so changing the name of the studio to Cloud Imperium Games Montreal made sense, right? To be able to leverage the outstanding talent in the city and build stable teams over there. And the team has grown quite a bit. And so this was really about like, clarifying stuff like this, and I think it's going well. I mean, the integration has been fantastic so far. I mean, the way the teams operate across the board at CIG are improving. I think that even though there's transatlantic, time zones, you can see a lot of the fruit of the collaborations between the teams show up right in the stuff that we've produced this year. The teams travel back and forth, the key leads are exchanging, and there's a really good gel between this. And so no, it's been, to be honest, really positive so far. So it's good.
Well, that about does it for what I have for you, Benoit. Chat's been like SCL stands for Star Citizen Long. Sometimes, at least when Benoit and I get together, and people are like, Star Citizen Long, or Star SCL longer than Citizen Gone Direct. That's crazy. Yeah. It will be longer than Citizen Gone Direct. Let's talk about that for a second.
Sure, yeah.
Still got some time. So in case folks don't know, Citizen Gone Direct is coming. It's on October 11th. It's why I'm here in my office and not on the spaceship. We've set the spaceship up as a permanent filming location for Citizen Gone. Why is SCL longer than Citizen Gone Direct? Because this just takes me and Benoit. This just takes me and Benoit doing absolutely no prep, absolutely no prior discussion. Just like, hey, you want to chat for like 3 hours about all these things? I'm just going to ask you about a bunch of crap, and you're going to, tell the truth. I'm like, yeah, we can do that. And he goes, this is a relatively easy thing. Don't equate length with a difficulty. Citizen Gone, even a Citizen Gone Direct, still involves 20, 30 different people all doing their part, and we got to work with all their schedules and stuff like that. And then there's editorial, there's editing it all together because it's like 5 different cameras at 4K each. And then there's all the B-roll creation, which is the same, a wonderful dedicated 6-person team that makes all the trailers and all stuff like that. So they got to do that in between the win, and then, reviews and reshoots and all that kind of stuff. So don't equate length with quality. Never said those words before. That was for him. He's laughing over there. You can't see him. But I do want to say, if you are some more things about Citizen Gone Direct. If you're a subscriber to the Squadron 42 newsletter that went out, that just went out with a map of the Odin system, there was a note at the end there about the Squadron 42 team still being heads down and working on that. I want to second the information there, and I want to star explain. I'm going to start explaining the information that was there. There will be no Squadron 42 presence at Citizen Gone Direct this year. So just in case there was any kind of people were like, I didn't quite understand the message, or maybe the message wasn't fully clear and whatnot. And if it wasn't, maybe that was on us. That team is heads down We drew a line in the sand when we said 2026. I don't know if we're going to make it. I just know that we're going to do every single thing possible to make it. And part of that is not taking time for the distraction of CitizenCon. That's why we're not doing a larger event this year. It's why we're doing a smaller, more focused thing. Even when we did digital CitizenCon, those were still these big 6, 8, 10-hour things. We called that CitizenCon. This is not CitizenCon. It's CitizenCon Direct. It's a much smaller, more focused thing, specifically on the work of the Star Citizen team and what they plan for the next year of development. We're not going to look at 1.0 stuff and so like this. It's just we're going to take a look at what the next year of our intention is for that. So it's a much smaller, more dedicated thing. I think you're still going to enjoy it. People who are working on it are doing a lot of really hard work to make it as entertaining and informative as possible. But again, just want to be real clear with the expectations management. No Squadron 42 presence at all. That's not a release date. That's not any of that stuff. We're letting those people stay focused. They're letting those people stay focused. We're on track. There's nothing to report. There's no mystery. There's no anything we're hiding or whatever. It's just like we said when we announced Star Citizen. It's like we said when we announced Star Citizen Direct. We're trying to stay out of everybody's way and let them focus and let them do the work that they're here to do, which is make the game.
It's also a misconception that all the resources are in Squadron 42, right? Like the reality is there's two teams, right? Yeah. And we get to push both games, right? It's super important for that. Now, obviously, Squadron, unfortunately, has got to be under a bit more secrecy, right? Yeah. But
no, it's not a. So I can already see the chat. The chat's already like, oh, it means this, it means that. Folks, it means that when it's time for the game to come out, you're going to hear a lot more about it. It's always been different. We've always been all big yappy on Star Citizen and less yappy on Squadron. So it's just an extension of that. It's just as we get closer to our intended release date in 2026, we will start opening up the doors, opening up the communication. You'll start seeing more of all that kind of stuff that you would expect in a proper go-to-market campaign. It's just, we're just doing this. We're staying out of everybody's. It's the same thing. That's why there's fewer ISCs this year. It's why there's fewer SCLs this year. We just want the people, as part of this change that we talked about for the first 30 minutes of this show, this reorganizational change, we want people's focus being on making the game. That's it. It's really no more complicated than that. So when the time is right, you'll see plenty of Squadron 42 stuff, I promise. So with that said, that's it. That's our show. 3 hours. Thank you, of course, to Benoit, who flew halfway around the world to sit in a room like
across the
100 meters that way and take the time to sit on the show with us.
I even put my TDK shirt just for you.
I know, because I'm an astute collector of
that's right.
High-quality audio cassette tapes. So thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for being respectful in chat to your fellow chatters. Saw a lot of folks with a lot of good conversation there. And thank you, as always, again. I did it already, but I'm going to do it again. Benoit, for agreeing to come. I don't know. I've worked a lot of places in my life, and I've been in a lot of studios, and I've never known a CTO to be this willing to come on and share this level of candor and insight with people. So thank you.
I'm glad for it. It's the DNA of our project, man. Got to do it.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Love you guys.
Bye.
Bye.